Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
New Seas Ahead by Peacelight24. Nakama means you never have to say goodbye or be alone, in which Monkey D. Lucy, future Pirate King, and Roronoa Zoro, future world's greatest swordsman, are dumb and everyone else is long-suffering. Or, things with them are always do or die, and love is just the same. Nakama ship, pining, Zorox Femme Lucy. Adios.
Zoro approaches Shaki's bar with a strange mix of eagerness and disappointment. Lucy isn't here. Lucy isn't anywhere on the island, that Zoro can sense. Rayleigh's here though, he's pretty sure, and if Zoro's going to track down his captain, Rayleigh is still the best person to start with, even 2 years down the line. Zoro pushes open the creaky oak door, and the familiar, much-missed smell of a musty bar wafts over him as he steps in. Zoro stops in the entrance, waiting for the owners to call him in. "Welcome," Shaki's rough voice greets. "You're the first one here." Zoro steps into the bar and the door swings shut behind him. His eyes adjust slowly, and Rayleigh morphs from a white-gray blur to a more defined silhouette raising a tumbler of scotch and greeting. "Sit, have a drink," Shaki invites. "Sake, right?" "Thanks," he accepts. He pulls up the stool next to Rayleigh. "You were with Lucy, right? Where is she? How is she?" Rayleigh hides a smile behind his glass. "I was, but I came back a few months ago. I'm sure she's fine though. A friend wanted to drop her off, but she should be here soon enough." Rayleigh grins. She's strong, after all. A knot of tension 2 years old releases, at least mostly. He'll relax when he sees her, but it sounds like she's okay. I know she is. Shaki drops a whole sake bottle in front of him, and Zoro takes it with a grin. "Thanks." Drinking without having anyone looking over his shoulder is something of a relief. "So where did the tyrant send you?" Shaki asks. "Somewhere useful." Zoro nodded. I trained with a master swordsman. Left about a month ago." Rayleigh considers for a moment, and then doesn't ask, "You're stronger, then?" Zoro takes a sip out of the sake bottle. Rayleigh should be able to tell, but he clearly wants to see what Zoro says in response. "I am." "Glad to hear it," Rayleigh tells him genially. Then the light in his eyes grows more serious, and something rakes across his senses. The presence of a predator, like when Lucy dropped that yak or when Rayleigh rendered an auditorium unconscious. It's not that the old man is using his conquerors, he's just unmasking it to emphasize his point. She needs someone who can keep up with her. "Funny. This feels like a test. We won't let her down again," Zoro answers after a moment, holding Rayleigh's gaze. "I won't." Rayleigh's eyes flash, but Zoro doesn't catch the emotion behind it. His senses won't stop insisting he investigate the nearby predator. "No," Shaki says warmly. "I don't think you will." "But Macha-kun," Shaki calls as she takes a gentle drag of her cigarette. Zoro sends her a look to express his displeasure over the nickname. "I think, were she here, Monkey-chan would promise the same to you." Zoro knows that. They spent 2 years apart because of that. "I won't fail her," he repeats. Shaki gives him a look, and Zoro feels Rayleigh's gaze sharpen through observation haki. "Because she's my captain," he adds awkwardly. Shaki snorts. Rayleigh takes a sip of his scotch, and there's a distinct air of amusement around it. Zoro feels his cheeks burn, and takes a longer than necessary pull of his sake. Lucy and the others better show up soon. If nothing else, Rayleigh and Shaki seem unfortunately perceptive, and Zoro's not sure how many smug looks and vaguely threatening glances he can take from the Dark King and his wife. Only you could nearly get dragged to an entirely different island when someone points to a boat 10 feet in front of you. Honestly, of all his nakama to reunite with after 2 years, it had to be the shitty cook he saw first. Zoro was kinda hoping he would drown somewhere before showing up in Sabaody. "Number 7 shouldn't be so smug towards number 1, Zoro retorts, unwilling to acknowledge the comment. He was tired. Okay. His nerves have gotten worse every day that passed without Lucy's arrival. He wanted to take a nap, and then they tried to take him to the next island, which No, he's not postponing this reunion a single minute longer than necessary. And, really, if he could destroy their ship that easily, he probably did those guys a favor. I still don't know how you managed to get here first, shitty mosshead. Talent, shit cook. Talent. I'm aware it's something you lack. Sanji glowers at him. You may have lost an eye, but your shitty ego is twice as big without anyone around to deflate it, he retorts. But he refrains from actually kicking him, and yeah, okay. Zoro's kind of alright with seeing him too. It's been a week since he arrived, and although various crew members have been wandering around here somewhere, he has yet to run into any of them. He can sense them, though, through observation haki. He can sense the whole island. Judging from the way Sanji keeps careful, easy track of the crowd, Zoro's guessing the cook learned the skill too. The bastard's senses seem more in tune to his immediate surroundings than Zoro's, though. Detail-oriented, rather than big picture. If he's being objective about it, that's good. It means there's a balance of skills among the crew. It means they can't be taken by surprise. It's still irritating to see how smug the shit cook is though. He still hasn't sensed Lucy yet, but if Rayleigh is anything to go by, he maybe won't unless she uses conquerors. The old man is even better than Mihawk at masking his presence, when the asshole bothers to mask it at all, and Zoro is betting Rayleigh taught Lucy the same trick. Still, something in his gut is telling him to move toward the edge of the commercial area, toward the more lawless groves. Zoro trusts his gut. He starts walking forward, veering off in a vaguely left-ish direction. Behind him, Sanji suddenly stops cold, and sniffs. I smell beef and perfume? Zoro sends him a quizzical eyebrow. Sanji's always been a bit off, but he's been acting like he swallowed a magic mushroom or something every time he sees a woman. Predictably, the blonde man scurries off to a food stand, manned by a pretty young woman with long dark hair and a generous bust. The girl looks vaguely uncomfortable in the face of the cook's raving about her skills. She's breathing though, so she's Sanji's type, and he probably won't leave her alone. Zoro rolls his eye and continues on, letting his gut lead him and leaving the cook behind. 10 minutes later, he's passing the less wholesome shops on the edge of the commercial groves. The ones peddling porn or recreational drugs and shady-looking loan adverts. And something flashes across his senses that makes him stop and take pause. A will more dangerous than a simple predator. A powerful one. A girl. A voice and aura like the sun and the sea. Lucy. It can only be Lucy. It's all Zoro can do to keep his breathing steady. She's 3 groves away. Other side of the commercial district, and on the edge of the lawless groves. She's in the area where gangs have taken up shop in spite of the authorities' efforts, and it feels like she just took a few of them out. Zoro runs. It's easy to keep track of her, now that she's blown her cover and he's got a lock on her voice. She wanders away easily, unconcernedly. Something irrational inside him is certain he's about to miss her, and that if he doesn't fix it now, he won't see her for another 2 years. Admittedly, he isn't paying attention to much other than her, his heart beating erratically in his chest. He runs into no less than 3 different people, that last clipping him on the shoulder so hard he spins away in a full rotation, and he has to stop to steady himself, find her. Then he looks up and she's there. If Zoro ever had any doubt as to whether or not he is in love with her, the way his heart leaps to his throat and seems to expand violently in his chest would be all the proof he could ever need. He drinks her in, vaguely disbelieving. She's crouched in front of a mangy dog, munching on an apple, and she's turned away from him so he can't see her face. She's maybe 20 feet ahead of him, but it feels like another 2 years distance from here. He's shaky and due to keep putting one foot before the other. He knows the exact moment she notices him, because her hand stutters as she strokes the dog's tawny, coarse fur. She freezes, stands, and Zoro stops moving entirely. She turns around, and the apple rolls from her fingers. Zoro's breath ceases and his body feels like it's on fire because Lucy is beautiful. Her hair is longer than he remembers, the ends meeting the top of her shoulders. It frames her face better, makes her look older, more adult. While she's always been kind of wiry, she looks stronger now, lean and well-defined. Like an athlete. Her brown eyes are blown wide, her freckles prominent against her cheekbones. The scar on her chest stands out against her skin, red and angry under the black leather and crimson fabric. She might be wearing a net as a skirt now, but the shorts beneath it and the sandals are familiar. She looks older, more mature, and yet still inherently the same, still Lucy. There's something beautiful and tragic in her face. Like she's feeling too much. Joy and longing and need are in her eyes, and Zoro would know because he feels the same. He takes a hesitant step forward, arms opening a little in unconscious invitation. Something in Lucy's expression fractures, and then she sprints toward him full tilt, crossing the distance between them in 3 easy strides. She takes a running leap and he braces himself as she plows into him. Legs wrapping around his waist and her arms clamping in a circle over and under his shoulders. She buries her face in the crook of his neck, and the smell of the sea and sun and citrus and rich, woody anise that fills his nostrils is so familiar it hurts, even after all this time. Zoro closes his arms around her, vice-like and impregnable as he trembles. Zoro doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in heaven or hell or anything other than his own strength and his crew's, the fact that he's in love with his captain who will be Pirate King, and his destiny as the world's greatest swordsman. But he thinks, as his legs give out and he's forced to his knees with her still wrapped firmly around him and his hand cradling her head to his shoulder with some strange sense of release far beyond simple relief, that he could almost understand why someone might call this feeling jubilation, revelation, or religious ecstasy. It's not any of those, though. It's catharsis, and joy so potent it's painful. He rocks slightly on his knees, reveling in her touch, the rise and fall of her lungs beneath his hands, and closes his eyes in silent, painful reverie as he feels her tears make a wet patch on his shoulder. "I missed you," she croaks, her voice barely loud enough to reach him, even with her lips brushing against his ear. "I missed you. Didn't leave you," he promises. He's surprised he can speak at all. He's shaking so hard. "I never will." She emits a soft, pained noise that makes him tense defensively, his whole body instinctively reacting to her injury. He curls around her even tighter, and he feels the bridge of her nose press against his neck as she cries in earnest, tears flowing from her face to his skin and down his chest as she hides it. She takes ragged, quiet breaths, trying not to make any noise. Zoro has not gotten any better at comforting people in the last 2 years. But even he realizes this is the type of thing that has to run its course. He resolves to hold her until the tears cease and her breath no longer trembles. Until insecurity and disbelief fade from him, and the shock drains away to return feeling to his fingers. Kneeling in the sticky grass, the woman he's so painfully in love with clinging to him and crying for relief enjoy his arms. Zoro presses a kiss to the top of her shoulder, and closes his eyes in the most profound sense of peace he has ever felt before. This is right. This is home. This is home. And he's been wandering for much longer than 2 measly years. Lucy isn't exactly sure how long they stay kneeling in the grass, but she's willing to bet it's a long time when she finally stops crying. She's so happy. And Zoro shifts beneath her in a vaguely uncomfortable way. He hasn't moved this whole time, has barely even lifted his forehead from her shoulder, and she, reluctantly, starts to pull away so he can unfurl a bit. Large, calloused hands slide vice-like to her hips and pull them back to his waist, locking her against him. Lucy notices the faintest of tremors in those powerful fingers as they press warm and heavy against her skin. Zoro breathes, shaky. He doesn't even lift his head, his breath warming the meager space between them. He sounds surprised at himself. Just a little longer. Lucy doesn't mind that. Lucy doesn't mind that at all. She pulls him closer, relaxed and warm all over. It's unbelievable how much she missed him, and even though seeing him, finally, makes her absolutely jubilant, there's a part of her that aches and mourns for 2 years spent apart. 2 years that seem sharper now upon reuniting. To reassure him, she fists one hand in the back of his robe and the other comes up to play with the hair at the nape of his neck. Longer and thicker now than it was 2 years ago. It felt finer, cropped so close to his head. She never knew her swordsman had such nice hair. She wonders who or what convinced him to grow it out. Zoro seems to sense that she's not going anywhere now, and the tension in his body leaks away under her fingers. He slides his hands around to press against her back again, and he even nuzzles into the corner of her neck and shoulder, breathing deep. Lucy feels something soft and painful break inside her. She's glad they took this time apart to grow, but she regrets the pain her decision caused her nakama. Especially her swordsman. It offers her a guilty breed of reassurance, however, that maybe she was right. Maybe those feelings are just as present for him, too. Pressed in close like this, she can feel the mass of corded muscle he's become, and now that she's a bit calmer it sends shivers down her spine. She wants to trace each groove of skin and sinew, learn his body from memory alone. She wants to know what took his eye, and learn the ridges of the scar with her lips. He's beautiful, her swordsman. Beautiful, and she's wanted him for years. Lucy does want to know who told him about the Amazonian tradition of displaying battle scars though. She owes that person both a favor and a punch in the face for getting Zoro to wander around half shirtless in this green robe of his. She's not sure how anyone expects her to avoid distraction like that. They stay like that for a long time, just curved into each other and relishing the contact. She's glad Zoro is the first of her crew that she's seen. She needed this, and judging from the way he still hasn't uncurled from around her, Zoro did too. She wants to know what happened to him, she wants to know everything. She wants to tell him. Fucking figures that shitty swordsman would get lost again. It's a familiar voice, one that draws her attention immediately. Zoro recognizes it too because his hands clench convulsively around her, like he can't decide if he should let her go or pull her into him. While Lucy could remain wrapped around Zoro for the rest of her life and not object, they have a crew to reunite with and there will be time later to tell him all the things she wants to. Lucy makes the decision for him and eases away, but she lets her hands linger on him though, lets him know it's not a rejection or dismissal. She stands, but doesn't move out of arm's reach. Zoro follows her, and she's pretty sure he's grown another 1.5 inches over the last 2 years, because he positively towers over her now. His expression is soft. There's hunger there too. It makes her cheeks burn and butterflies flutter in her stomach. Lucy reaches out with observation haki, and immediately notices a strong voice that sounds like smooth jazz and sparks with low burning charcoal and smoke. Lucy turns to the source, and spots a blonde head of hair about 10 feet away, strolling toward them easily. Just observing him, Lucy knows he gave them time to reunite, and intentionally warned them of his arrival. There's no way he didn't know exactly where they were as soon as he came within 100 yards of them. It looks like she was right. Then, Sanji's good at observation haki. Maybe very good. Admittedly, Lucy's a bit jealous of that. Any proficiency she has with observation haki is thanks to backbreaking labor and effort, rather than any particular talent. Lucy bets Zoro's good at it too, considering his eye and the added focus compensating for it would require. Lucy waves, grinning. Zoro is warm and steady behind her, and she can tell he mostly doesn't mind the interruption. He and Sanji are actually friends after all, no matter what the two of them protest to the contrary. She's glad he stays close behind her though. She still feels untethered, in a way. In her mind's eye she still sees the way he was looking at her when she turned around to face him. Like the world might end if they didn't close the distance between them. One sharp gray eye burning with need against bronze skin, reflecting exactly the way she felt herself. Lucy still feels a bit insecure, a bit needy. She's glad Zoro hasn't stepped away. "What the hell's that shitty moss head doing to you, Sencho-san?" in the exact tone guaranteed to piss Zoro off the most. "Fuck off, number 7. Would you stop referring to us in order of arrival? One miracle ain't enough to make up for a lifetime of getting lost running in straight lines. You got here first?" she asks in surprise. Sanji's right, that's a new one. No wonder he's so proud. Zoro scowls at her. "Yes. Don't be so rude to Lucy-san. You brute," Sanji scolds. And he steps a little closer so Lucy can go in for a hug. It's nothing like the embrace she just shared with Zoro, but there's an undeniable sense of relief all the same. Sanny smells like cigarettes and something warm and spicy, like the Sunny's galley. She's missed her nakama. She's glad they'll be within reach now, rather than spread across the globe. Lucy releases Sanji quickly, stepping back so her hip brushes Zoro's. It's a comfort to her as much as it is an assurance to him. A promise of sorts. She sees Sanji take note of it, but his mouth is hidden behind a cigarette so she can't see his reaction. "We should probably get back to the others," Zoro tells them. They're all waiting at the ship. And damn, Zoro really does have better observation haki than her. She can kind of sense that, but it's fuzzy and indistinct with that much distance. She'd need much better focus to pick her crew out passively like that. She's going to need to keep working on this. She needs to be capable of holding entire islands in her sight so she can keep track of her crew properly. Alright. Lead the way, Sanji, she orders, grinning. Sanji beams, blue eye glinting with something very close to pride. Aye, Sencho-san. They walk back to the ship easily and without incident, and even though Sanji and Zoro bicker the whole way back, Zoro stays close beside her, and doesn't complain at all when Lucy takes his hand in hers. Explain again where you got the giant bird, Sanji asks, sitting easily at the rear. Most people probably wouldn't be nearly so comfortable 300 feet in the air without some kind of harness, but Lucy's crew is awesome, and Sanji looks completely at ease. Chopper, still sitting in Lucy's lap. It's been a long time since she hugged Chopper. Okay, and 2 years have just made him fluffier. Giggles. He's my friend. A pause. Well, he tried to kill me first, but now we're friends. Zoro huffs something that sounds suspiciously like, not another one. But the tone is heartwarmingly fond no matter how much irritation Zoro tries to imbue it with. He's sitting behind her, his shoulder brushing her back occasionally when one of them shifts. Sounds like you've had Lucy compliments, grinning giddily. She's proud of him, her little doctor who didn't even think he could leave Drum, going off and having adventures on his own. He'll never be alone again, of course. Not now, but it's still nice to see how much he's grown into himself. Chopper, for his part, squirms happily at the comment. Shut up, you asshole. That doesn't make me happy. It's weird, but the cuter Chopper gets, the more she wants to squeeze him. Go figure. Oi, the ship's coming up, Zoro warns. We can all sense that, Moss head. Sanji growls, still irritated with something Zoro said a few minutes before Chopper showed up. Lucy doesn't remember exactly what it was. Something about numbers. Huh? Chopper asks, bewildered. We can sense them with Haki, Lucy explains. This does not seem to explain much to Chopper. What's, oh, take us down. Lucy looks over the edge of the bird, leaning over so far that Zoro sighs and catches her by the back of her shorts to keep her from falling off entirely. She doesn't mind though, doesn't even really register it because there, in a small little cove surrounded by mangrove trees and green water, is her ship. The sunny looks beautiful, all red and golden atom wood, and the figurehead looks as bright and optimistic as it did the day they left Water 7, and on the deck. On the deck are the 5 remaining members of her crew, her nakama. Hey, everybody, she calls, waving at them enthusiastically with both hands as she finally releases Chopper, and Zoro cursing at her from behind as he struggles to keep her from falling off the bird. There's a moment of surprise, and then 4 voices cry out her name. Lucy grins, so broad her cheeks hurt and her eyes water. The bird sweeps down to land before the ship, and Lucy leaps off well before the wings fold back against his sides. Lucy, Nami with long hair, is the first one to reach her when she makes it up the gangplank, and something akin to joy and relief is written in her eyes even as she tackles Lucy with a giant bear hug so fierce it topples Lucy completely. She finds herself flat on her back on the grass deck with her enthusiastic navigator crying happy tears and berating her for not getting back sooner. Oi, Nami, let her up, Usopp complains. We want to say hello too. And Nami does, muttering about how irritating captains are and still wiping some of the moisture out of her eyes. Then Lucy is passed around, first to Usopp, who has facial hair now and muscles, then to Frankie, with his massive shoulders and his own happy tears and assurances that he's made improvements to the Sunny he's sure she'll like. Next is Brook, strumming a green electric guitar rather than his trusty violin, and he asks to see her panties. A question that has Nami kicking him in the head and Zoro bristling from across the deck, but he also promises to play her Bink's sake. Soul Edition, soon. Finally there's Robin, who is quietly thrilled, wearing a long skirt that reminds Lucy of Hancock and with her hair pulled away from her face in a way that makes Lucy think she's happier, and unhiding from the world. Lucy looks around at all 8 of them and smiles as broadly as she can. I missed you guys. Usopp covers his eyes to hide the wetness on his face even as he grins, and Sanji turns away suspiciously, his face covered by his hair. The yellow-red beam pierces Sunny's hull, ripping wood from the frame. Lucy doesn't even pause, she just leaps over the side with one arm held in a block position, black with Haki, and the other hand gripping the edge of the deck. The beam of light hits, but does nothing against her will. She grunts a little, but the beam is reflected back to the pacifista, rebounding and destroying the delicate machinery in the explosion. Straw Hat bellows a large man with an axe. Lucy remembers him from the last time they were here. You better come with me now. You won't make it in the new world. Lucy frowns at the man, flummoxed. Obviously they would. What did he think they waited 2 years for anyway? Lucy pulls herself back over the side of the ship to stand next to Zoro, who promptly expresses his own displeasure with that statement by swinging Shisui in an almost casual arc that has so much force behind it 3 of the mangroves cleave in half as the air pressure carves its way to a pacifista behind the big marine. The machine is cleanly severed in 2 in the blink of an eye, but not a single hair on the marine's head was touched. Lucy can't quite help eyeing Zoro and his muscles appreciatively. Seriously, he was distracting enough before, and he wasn't running around half topless then. How on earth is she supposed to focus now? Sanji, not to be outdone, quickly takes a running leap off the Sunny's deck and uses the still falling trees to ricochet off of them like a pinball, until he reaches the last remaining pacifista, and promptly buries it in the earth to the waist with one kick. The top half of the machine crumpled like paper. Geez, and I thought they were strong before, Usopp mutters. What the hell kind of monsters are you people? Nami demands. As Sanji bounds back, the axe guy looks around, clearly furious. Straw Hat. Lucy just grins, expression fierce. Her crew is strong. Then she notices a presence, one she hasn't spoken with for 6 months now. Lucy turns to the front of the ship, and sees Rayleigh not far away, sitting easily on one of the tree trunks Zoro felled a moment ago. I came to offer assistance, he tells her, his weathered face creased in a smile. But it looks like you have things well in hand. Lucy smiles at him. She does not know where she'd be without Rayleigh. Thank you for everything these last 2 years. Rayleigh chuckles. It's unlike you to be so polite, he teases. Go on, you lot. You have a ship to sink. Lucy nods, the smile still plastered across her face. I'm gonna do it, you know. Rayleigh tilts his head to the side, like he does when he's waiting for her to explain something that apparently only makes sense to her. She raises a fist in the air, and presses Shanks' hat down into her hair. Pirate King. I'm gonna do it. Behind her, a couple members of her crew sniffle at the statement, but Rayleigh just holds her gaze steadily until his lips curve up into a smile. Lucy isn't great with observation hockey, but she is good at sensing emotions in other people. In Rayleigh there's pride. So much pride, and maybe even love for her and her crew. Rise to the top then, and see what there is to see. And that's all that ever needs to be said between them. Lucy grins, and turns to her crew. We ready to go? Just give the order, Sencho, Nami responds, her eyes watering a little, and that's only the second time Lucy can recall her navigator ever calling her by her title. Lucy moves to stand below the mast, her hands on her hips, and she grins as she feels Rayleigh's presence explode into mischief as he goes to confront the axe-wielding marine and the grunts they've sent after her. Everyone, she calls, and immediately each and every one of her nakama are focused on her, proud and anticipatory smiles on their lips. They like adventuring just as much as she does, the liars. There's a lot I want to tell you, and I want to hear about where you were and what you were up to these last few years. But first, thank you for going along with my selfish decision. Idiot, Nami responds, flippant. You've always been selfish, of course we went along with it. There's a general hum of agreement from the more vocal members of the crew, and an enthusiastic declaration of loyalty from Sanji. She feels Zoro's eyes on her, and despite the contentment and quiet pride and lingering relief she feels from him, she refuses to return his gaze. She'd forget what she has to say. All right, set sail, she bellows, and she thinks the trees might shake with the declaration, and carry her determination on their trembling limbs right up to the sky. I'm going to be Pirate King, Ace. Just watch. I know you've been waiting to see it. And with her nakama gather friends they've made over the past 2 years protecting them, they sink into the depths below, the next adventure waiting to be had. As it turns out, sailing to the bottom of the ocean is more boring than Lucy expected. At first it wasn't. At first the whole world was lit with murky green gold light and there were fish and various sea creatures everywhere. It was beautiful and fascinating and everyone at one point or another expressed genuine awe regarding the beauty of the undersea depths. That was hour 1. Then Lucy got the news. It'll take 10 hours to descend to Fishman Island. Nami explains. We have to go really slowly so the bubble has time to adjust to the pressure differences. If we sink too quickly, the bubble will pop and then everyone minus Lucy will be dead from the water pressure. And, after the first hour, they descended far enough down that the only light at all was coming from the sunny, the water around them pitch black and mysterious. So, first hour of sailing underneath the ocean. Great. The rest? Pretty boring, as far as Lucy can tell. Luce is still in way too good a mood to let it get her down though. She still can't stop smiling. Her nakama are here with her. They're going on another adventure, and Zoro. Lucy has not let it pass her notice that Zoro has barely let her out of his sight, despite being perfectly capable of keeping track of her through other senses. Lucy knows because she's been doing the same to him. Her heart twinning sort of panicked and needy every time his broad shoulders disappear behind the mast or the railing. She has to tell him, soon, like, right now, kind of soon. Except not quite now. Sanji is laying out the food for lunch, and something about the way he buzzes back and forth between the kitchen and the lawn deck where everyone still gathered makes Lucy think he's missed cooking for them as much as she's missed his cooking. The rest of the crew isn't much better than her and Zoro, to be honest. They're constantly touching one another, and her, and they hover in little groups, each refusing to leave the others alone. It makes a knot twist in Luce's stomach, just a little, something proud and remorseful and joyous all at once. She knows she made the right decision after Marineford, but she hates that she forced her crew apart. They probably needed each other as much as she needed them at one point or another over the last 2 years, and they had to stand apart thanks to her choice. But she can also see how much they've all grown, and not just in the last 2 years. She can't help but compare their current friendship to the wonderful, perfect loners and outcasts she first met on their adventures. She loves that they love each other. She loves them, and she catches up with each of them in turn. She has the best crew. It's no idle boast, and for so many reasons. Alright, come sit down you lot. Lunch is ready, Sanji calls, and there's a mad scramble as the other 8 of them make their way to the picnic table. Well, everyone scrambles except for Zoro, Nami, and Robin. Zoro, probably because 2 years of separation means nothing in the face of brotherly rivalry, and Nami and Robin because they know Sanji would have saved them each a place near the best food. Actually, he probably saved Lucy a seat as well, but that doesn't stop her from rushing to fight Usopp for the spot next to the bread rolls. Finally, after much flailing and general disorder that feels so achingly familiar and routine, like they never had a day apart, everyone settles. Sanji fawns over Lucy, Robin, and Nami, serving them each perfectly portioned helpings of filet mignon and roasted vegetables and pouring Robin and Nami a glass of red wine. Lucy is still under the age of majority, so she's, regretfully, on Sanji's part, denied wine, and happily drinks grape juice instead. But after that everyone else is allowed to dig in, and the usual free-for-all begins as the boys try to fill their plates and wolf down as much food as they can before Lucy finishes and starts stealing food off of their plates. Sanji looks close to bursting when the compliments roll in from all sides. Lucy has to admit, it's clear her cook has outdone himself. Even she's taking time to taste the food before swallowing. Sanji looks so proud and satisfied it kind of makes her want to hug him, but she would have to stop eating for that, so that's a no-go. There's something about eating together, eating and laughing and bickering and stealing food off of one another's plates, that makes their reunion feel more real. It makes Lucy feel warm all over, their bonds solidifying around and between each of them. Eventually the meal winds down and even Lucy stops eating Sanji's excellent food, her appetite sated for the time being. I have made it my personal mission to satisfy Lucy-san's nutritional requirements with a single serving of food, Sanji declares once Lucy expresses her complete adoration of Sanji's cooking. There's a gleam in her cook's eye that's slightly deranged. I spent 2 years in hell to obtain those skills, they shall not go to waste. Bro, she eats more than the rest of us combined, Frankie responds skeptically. You'd need a plate the size of the Sunny. It can be done, Sanji declares, determination glinting in blue eyes. I am sure of it. Lucy pats her stomach, a little round with food. Lucy would be skeptical if it was anyone else, but it's Sanji, so he can do it. I'm sure you can, Sanji. Her cook turns to her, his expression almost manically happy. Thank you for your faith, Lucy-san. I don't know, Sanji, Chopper adds, sounding reluctantly doubtful. Lucy's appetite is the way it is due to her devil fruit powers and subsequently increased metabolism. I'm not sure it's scientifically possible to actually satiate her with a single plate of food, even under lab conditions. I stake my honor as a cook on it, Sanji declares, undaunted. What kind of hell has cooking tips anyway? Zoro asks, tone snide. Bet it wasn't that bad, should cook. He's sitting at the other end of the picnic table, directly across from Sanji, and if they were of a mind to cut down on her boys' bickering, that was probably not the best possible seating arrangement. Sanji gives a full-body twitch that he would probably deny as a flinch, and growls. The kind of hell no one in their right mind speaks of in the light of day. You shit, swordsman. Especially not in the company of ladies. Lucy notices Nami raise a curious eyebrow. Come on, she goads, I'll tell you mine if you tell us yours. Usopp sighs, forlorn. You've gotten even more addicted to deal-making than you were in the past. I cannot, Nami-san, for the sake of your innocence. Half the crew turns to give Sanji an incredulous stare. Lucy is not included among their number, but she does understand. Nami's not exactly sheltered. Robin just giggles. Poor Sanji-kun. I heard rumors among the revolutionaries that Ivanako had an apprentice. I don't suppose you know who that was. Sanji freezes, and his whole face pales. Ah, Robin-chan, that's... Eva-chan? Lucy asks with interest. You're with Eva-chan? Sanji blinks at her in surprise, the shock fading. Oh, that's right. I forgot you knew him. Lucy's grin broadens. Wow, you've been training with Eva-chan this whole time? You must have gotten really strong, Sanji. Her cook puffs up a little with pride, at least until Brook interjects with an innocent, who is this Ivanako? One of the revolutionaries' top commanders. A personal friend of Dragon's, Robin explains calmly, and Robin-chan. The queen of Kamabaka. There's a solid 5 seconds of silence where Lucy watches Nami's face turn an interesting shade of purple, and then the entire table explodes in laughter. The most uproarious of which being Zoro, which surprises maybe no one but Lucy. He pants, and he's rolling around helplessly in the grass along with the rest of the crew, minus herself and Sanji. You, of all people, were trapped on an island of cross-dressers? Lucy frowns. Bon-chan's an Okama, and he's strong. Eva-chan's really strong too. Frankie, who had maybe laughed the second loudest of all of them and was helpless, giggles. That's not it, Aneki. It's just, Cookbro is. Well, do you know what irony is? Lucy does know what irony is, but she's a little confused as to why that sets the rest of them off in further gales of laughter. Nami is clinging to Robin now, apparently unable to support herself, and Usopp is helplessly pounding the deck with a fist as he laughs so hard tears stream down his cheeks. Hey, shit cook, did they make you wear a dress? Zoro asks eagerly, having hauled himself up to ask the question. This proves too much for her cook and he takes a flying leap over the picnic blanket with one leg wreathed in flames and hockey activated. Why you? Zoro happily engages him in a fight, but admittedly it's a bit one-sided since her swordsman can't quite stop laughing. Nami sits up, still huffing, and gives Sanji a speculative look. They did. I didn't wear a dress, Nami-san, Robin-chan, Lucy-san. Don't listen to this bastard. Brook, who had been laughing just as hard as everyone else, finally quiets. So Sanji-san went to an island of Okama, he summarizes. And I went to an island of highly superstitious devil worshippers, and managed to be recruited into a music career run by my long-arm managers. Where did everyone else end up? Weatheria, Nami answers easily. She's still wiping tears from her eyes, careful of mascara. It's a sky island where they do meteorological studies. Groundbreaking research. I learned a lot that will help us in the new world. Lucy beams at her navigator. Nami's so cool, and she's the best navigator. I was on a carnivorous island that was constantly trying to eat me, Usopp informs dryly. For once it doesn't seem like he's exaggerating, which makes Lucy mildly concerned in a detached sort of way. I had a near-death experience every day these last 2 years, but I learned a lot about the native plant life, and brought a bunch of it with me. I have to start growing a garden on the sunny for them though, he tells Frankie. The shipwright nods, and Lucy knows he's thinking of the best place to build a garden that won't interfere with Nami's trees or Chopper's medicinal herbs. Cross-pollination would probably be bad. I was thrown to Vegapunk's home island, Frankie tells them casually. I even found his old lab. Borrowed a bunch of ideas for the new me. Frankie gives them all a showy flex of his new, massive arms. Lucy giggles, and Usopp and Chopper make odd noises. Nami and Robin look typically unimpressed. My turn. My turn, Chopper cheers. I was on this island ruled by these massive birds. Like the one at Sabodi, only bigger, and I learned medical techniques from the tribe that lives there. I'm a way better doctor now, and I have more point forms available, even without the rumble balls. Oh god, Chopper has somehow gotten even cuter in the last 2 years. Lucy wants to squeeze. Violently. Is that safe, Chopper-san? Brooke asks mildly. I thought zone types like yourself were limited to 3 forms, and that you had already pushed that boundary with your rumble balls previously. Lucy remembers monsters in hell, but says nothing. Chopper blushes and wriggles, proud. Well, see, it's a bit technical, but I isolated the protein that controls the transformation in my bloodline elements, and figured out how to control the stop mechanism using this plant I found on the island. Basically, I opened my abilities up to the fullest extent of their potential, and can still control the stop mechanism at will. It's safe, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without that plant. It's very rare. Lucy zoned out somewhere in the middle of that explanation in favor of watching Zoro and Sanji duke it out a few yards away. They're really fighting in earnest now. Zoro with all 3 katana in hand and a vaguely annoyed expression on his face. Visible even around the hilt in his mouth. She can tell they're kind of enjoying it though, despite Sanji's overall rage and Zoro's irritation. If they weren't, there would be more damage to the ship. I was sent to a slave labor camp in East Blue, Robin tells them, and the whole table turns to her, wide-eyed. It was soon freed by the Revolutionary Army, and I spent the last 2 years working with them. Robin holds Lucy's gaze for a moment, and Lucy realizes she's waiting for her to ask about her father. Lucy has no plans to do so though, and just grins. I'm glad they freed the slaves. Her archaeologist looks unsurprised at her lack of questions, and her eyes soften. I am too. There was a little girl there who loved to draw. Robin smiles, her lips curving in that satisfied way she has. I'm sure she's drawing everything she sees now. Lucy guesses there's more to that statement, but she doesn't ask Robin to explain. I was sent to Amazon Lily. It's in the Calm Belt. Nami sits up. That's Boa Hancock's island, right? The warlord? The whole group turns to look at Lucy, and she knows they're aching for information, that they want to know exactly what happened to her while they were parted. She grins. Yep. She gave me a ride to Impel Down and helped me out during the war. We're friends, so she took care of me and Rayleigh afterward too, when we were training on Ruskina. She has no intention of telling them everything, or even most things. She won't even tell Zoro everything she experienced. There are just things about that story that can only hurt, herself and them alike. Lucy has accepted Ace's death. She knows he's gone. Knows she wasn't strong enough to protect him or herself in that war. She's grown since then, and even though she knows she still has growing to do, that she's not yet the strongest, she will be. And she's strong enough now to make sure no one can touch the people she loves ever again. Usopp looks like he wants to ask, but Robin cuts him off before he can. And you, Zoro-san? Where did the tyrant send you? Zoro disengages from Sanji by throwing him up into the rigging with his blades crossed and a clever burst of armament haki. Same place he sent Perona. The chick from Thriller Bark. Trained with a master swordsman there. Maybe he's just focusing on the cook, liable as he is to sweep down in a fit of fiery rage from the top of the mast on Zoro's head. But Lucy just knows, instinctive in that way she and Zoro always are, that there's more to that story. Robin hums, thoughtful. It's all very convenient, isn't it? Frankie nods, massive arms crossed. I was thinking the same thing. Bartholomew Kuma may have separated us, but he must have studied the crew closely. He sent us all to places we would be able to grow and learn from. His dividing us must have been prepared in advance. This seems especially likely considering the fact that he protected the ship for 2 years, even after being fully turned into a pacifista. Lucy recalls, briefly, the empty eyes of the man in Marineford. She recalls, too, how heartbroken Eva Chan sounded when she realized Kuma was no longer home. Brooke nods in that sage way he sometimes has, the one that reminds Lucy of just how much older her friend is than herself. His actions may have caused us some distress, but I believe the tyrant may have been the greatest ally we have ever had. There's silence around the picnic table for a moment before Nami asks quietly, "But why? Why do that for us?" "We may never have an answer," Robin adds solemnly. "He was turned fully into a pacifista 2 years ago. There is nothing left of his mind in his body." "The Walking Dead," Usopp whispers. Then he shivers, and Lucy picks up Chopper as he trembles, gives him a comforting squeeze. "Eva-chan said he was a good guy," Lucy said lowly, remembering. "I bet she'd be happy to know she's right," she adds with a smile. Her crew looks equal parts solemn, fond, and curious. Lucy broadens her smile so they don't worry. "Stand still, you shitty swordsman. It's not my fault you're too weak to hit me." Usopp gives a snort. Then a full-on laugh. The group turns to stare. "I'm sorry," he wheezes. "I'm sorry, it's just Sanji in a dress." This catapulted snickers as well, and Lucy wonders if she should mention that Eva-chan and Bon-chan both seem particularly fond of leotards. She decides against it, but only because Zoro and Sanji's fight finally makes its way over to the picnic blanket, where Zoro is slammed against the remains of their lunch, thankfully just breaking dishware. Rather than wasting food, or Sanji would be in a real tizzy. And there is much resulting screaming and hollering and laughing and fighting, and everything in Lucy feels warm and right and happy. Except, she thinks, one thing. There's still one thing she has to do before they can continue their adventures. She catches Zoro staring at her as she laughs, sees the way his eye widens in a soft sort of way, and thinks maybe he knows too. 6 hours into their descent to Fishman Island, Zoro quietly separates himself from the others. He still keeps track of them via haki, but he needs a moment. He hasn't been around this many people in years. It's almost disconcerting how quickly they all fall back into old patterns. Fighting with the cook, and hearing Nami lord long-held debts over his head, and listening to Usopp boast and Lucy laugh. But it's all more overwhelming than he expected too. He knew he missed them. He just hadn't realized how much he missed them. Even irritating the shit cook is more fun than he remembers. The fucking dress. He's never going to let him live that down. He finds himself in the aquarium. It's odd, because this is Robin's usual haunt, not his. Maybe he's sentimental, and part of him just wants to reacquaint himself with the ship. If he's honest, he missed the sunny, too. Plus, the aquarium is closer to the lawn deck than the observation room. Everyone's there, except the shit cook and Usopp, who are washing dishes in the galley, and Lucy. Lucy's climbing the steps. He turns to the door just as she approaches it from the other side. It surprises him a little, because last he checked, which is to say, about 30 seconds ago, she was firmly ensconced in the warm, protective embrace of the crew. There's something weirdly calm about her. Almost trance-like. It reminds him of the blank face she adopts sometimes when facing an enemy. She opens the door, and her figure is silhouetted against the lawn lights behind her. It hits him again, how much he missed her. But the need isn't quite so sharp now, not quite so desperate. It's soothed by the proximity over the last few hours, and the rest of the crew too. She takes a few steps toward him, walking into the glow of the aquarium lighting. It throws shadows across her face, makes her look sharper than she is, makes her eyes glow. He isn't over the changes to her appearance. The hair, the black leather, the scar. He wants to touch her again, commit the changes to memory, hold her until he's sure she's safe. He's not sure he'll ever be convinced she's safe again, not really. "I came to find you," she tells him, the expression on her face soft. "I have something I want to say." And she's nervous. He can tell. Nervous and also calm, resolved. "What's that?" he asks gruffly, crossing his arms over his. She's never needed to speak like that before. Not to him. They've always just understood. And he doesn't think that ability has dissipated in the last 2 years. He can't quite read her now though. Her face isn't quite blank, but it's close enough that it's hard to tell. Using observation haki to discern emotion feels like cheating, and he's never been very good at it anyway. To his surprise, she reaches out to take his hand, prying it away from his chest and catching it between her palms. Her hands are smaller than his, just as petite as the rest of her, and part of him wonders idly, for the 1000th time, How such strength can be contained in such small fingers. The rest of him immediately softens in a helpless sort of way, relaxing things inside him he didn't even know needed soothing. She looks down to their joined hands, seeming thoughtful. Zoro waits patiently, knowing whatever she's going to say is important. Then she takes a deep breath, and looks him in the eye, her face terribly, terribly honest. When I first heard your name, I think I knew already that I wanted you in my crew. I just knew. And then we met and I knew you were strong. So I made sure you became Nakama. Then she smiles, so brightly it nearly splits her face in two, but there's a softness there too, a vulnerability he's only seen occasionally before. I think even then I was halfway in love with you. Zoro's eye widens, his whole body going numb. What? I didn't figure it out until later though, she remarks, as casually as if she's just describing the weather. She starts to play with the fingers of the hand she's trapped, and shakily his free one reaches toward her, uncertain, freezing halfway to her face. Much later. I didn't admit to myself I was in love with you until Thriller bark. Her face spasms a little at the memory, and his thumb brushes against a scar on her palm. I wanted to tell you then, she says quietly, painfully, and if Zoro wasn't so numb with shock right now he'd touch her, soothe away the memory, remind her he's alive. I waited though. And then Sabaody happened, and the war, and I couldn't tell you until now, and I don't want to wait anymore. Lucy's eyes burn, look straight through to his very soul. I love you, Roronoa Zoro. Zoro feels weak in the knees, suddenly, like his strings have been cut. He feels lightheaded and untethered and about ready to burst in half, and distantly he realizes he isn't even breathing. He's known. For years he's known how he feels and for months he's admitted it and now he's finally faced with her and most of him never expected her to return the feeling, he realizes. No matter what he said, or thought, or observed, most of him never thought he'd hear her say it, that he'd be in a perpetual, endless state of pining for a girl too great to be tethered by such a mortal thing as love. Lucy's eyes quickly dart across his face, and they soften with fondness and warmth. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know, before we went on another adventure. She brings his hand up, still grasped in both of hers, and brushes his heavy knuckles against her soft cheek. Heat breaks through the numbness where her skin touches his, and he wants to grab her, throw her down on the couch cushions and show her exactly what she means to him, but she deserves an answer. A real one. He starts. His throat clenches. Fuck, why can't he say it? He knows he loves her, he does. Loves her with a terrible sort of abandon he never expected for himself, so why? Her eyes widen, maybe reading the frustration on his face, maybe the fear, and she grips his hand harder. You don't have to say anything, she promises. A smile lights her face, and Zoro kind of wants to melt before it. I just wanted you to know. I would have regretted it otherwise. And that's a play on words, drawing on their first conversation. She remembers, of course she does. And then suddenly Lucy is drawing away, halfway to the door already with Zoro as numb and in shock as he is, and dear God, he can't let her just leave like that. Fuck, she does not get to be that selfish. He reaches for her just as she starts to cross the threshold of the door, and he calls out a desperate, Lucy. She turns back to him, surprise written all over her face, and he'd maybe be hurt by that if he didn't know how out of sorts he is. And God, she's so beautiful with the casual sway of power in her spine and the easy, self-assured grace that wasn't present 2 years ago, lingering in the lines of her skirt. She's perfect. So heartbreakingly perfect his tongue feels 3 times its normal size and he can't stop himself from sort of freezing in her wake. He opens his mouth, and he's terrified, confused, there's a bubble in his chest that might be joy or agony, he's not sure, and he's not sure what he's about to say except it has to be better than nothing, and then the screaming starts from the deck, and he realizes they've both been so preoccupied that they managed to miss a boat showing up out of nowhere, along with a kraken. Lucy notices too, and gives him an apologetic glance that has an air of "See, this is why I told you when I did," that he can't quite find it in himself to be annoyed at. Later, she promises. When it's over. And then she's off, and he doesn't have much choice but to follow behind, cursing the entire time. Lucy wakes coughing up seawater, and her first delirious thought is that it took Zoro a long time to fish her out of the sea this time. Oh good, Lucy's awake, Nami says from somewhere off to her left. I thought she was going to need CPR. Chopper agrees, closer to her head. Lucy blearily opens her eyes to see the reindeer leaning over her. Eyes clinical in that way he has when he's in doctor mode. I would have enthusiastically volunteered. Sanji exclaims, his voice coming from near Nami. Anything to aid Lucy-san. Zoro would have killed you later. Nami grumbles, and Lucy sees her navigator peer down at her worriedly. The effects of the seawater are fading quickly now that she's expelled the liquid from her lungs. Lucy sits up, pressing the heel of her hand into her eye, trying to relieve the pressure. Where is Zoro? And everyone else? Because now that she's not so out of it and her head is clearing, she realizes she can't sense half her crew, even with her observation hotkey cranked to full blast. She needs to get better at this. She can sense they're on an island though, that they've somehow made it to dry land. We're not sure. Everyone got split up when we entered. Right. Fishman Island. Then this must be. Lucy looks around and sees crystal clear water and colorful reefs and mermaids. They made it. Well, mostly. Lucy huffs, mildly irritated, and grumbles as she brushes sand off. See? This is why I had to tell Zoro I love him. He keeps getting lost, she complains. She reaches around to pull her hat to her head. She feels better with it on. Well, whatever. I'm sure the others are fine. Let's. Lucy. Nami screeches. The girl in question flinches, startled, and stares wide-eyed at her navigator. What? She asks, bewildered. Nami is staring at her with huge eyes, taking up practically half her face, and Lucy notices Chopper and Sanji and Usopp are giving her the same identical looks. Lucy-san, Sanji starts, almost hesitant. Did you say you confessed to the Mosshead? Lucy blinks. Yes? There's a moment of silence, and then Nami hurls herself at her, squealing. Finally, she shouts in Lucy's ear. Do you know how long I've been waiting for this? No, I have so many bets riding on you. Ah. That makes a little more sense. Ah man, this means I owe you 5,000 berry, Usopp groans. My lovely Lucy-san, committing herself to that brood, bemoans Sanji. We all saw it coming, but I lament it all the same. What are you talking about? Chopper demands, fur fluffing in indignation. Lucy just can't see him as intimidating when he's all small and fluffy like this. This is wonderful. So, tell me what he said, Nami demands, still shedding happy tears over her betting pool. Nothing, Lucy responds, bewildered. Her Nakama's expressions develop identical bemused fractures, oddly enough. Nothing? Nami asks. Nothing at all? Lucy scratches her head under the edge of her hat. Well, he kind of froze? And then he was about to say something but then that ship showed up. And Tsurume. And then we got separated. Lucy nods to herself. Good thing I told him. I would be upset about that if I hadn't. 4 pairs of eyes stare at her, identical expressions something between shock, horror, and absolute befuddlement. It's not the first time someone, or even a group of someones, has given Lucy that look though, so she doesn't pay it much mind and cocks her head to Nami. So what does that mean for your betting pool? Honestly, Lucy's not quite sure what to make of the way Nami cries and starts punching her, but really that can only mean bad things for Nami and money. The first thing Zoro does when he wakes in the King Fishman's castle is cough, grab the shirt of the nearest guard, and growl, "Sake. Bring me all of the sake." Apparently, Zoro is still intimidating enough half-drowned and soaking wet to get people to obey his orders. Either that, or the fishmen are weirdly hospitable to random strangers. Whatever the case, Zoro soon finds himself surrounded by several crates of sake, and he nods, somewhat satisfied. Keep him coming, he commands, popping off the faucet of the nearest barrel and lifting it over his head like some kind of fountain or such shit. To be clear, Zoro would drink like this under perfectly normal circumstances. Today, he reunited with his Nakama just long enough for his captain to tell him she's in love with him. He didn't manage to respond in time, and now Zoro's a fucking mess, so yeah, he's drinking. Fuck. Lucy. She said she loves him. She said she's in love with him. Why is he so stunned by this? It's not that he expected it, per se, but he thought his feelings were returned, maybe. He thought, at least to some extent, she might accept or even welcome his feelings. He never thought for an instant about what it would mean to have those feelings go both ways at the same intensity. And really, if he thinks about it for half a second, he can understand why he froze. He can guess why he never had much expectation for reciprocity. No one's ever told Zoro they love him before. Certainly not in so many words. God, how did he not realize how twisted his head was earlier? He thought he got this sorted over the last 2 years, and yet here he is. Literally drinking this entire island's weight in sake. And he's absolutely dumbstruck over a simple confession from a girl who shares his feelings. He should be ecstatic, right? He should be over the fucking moon. Most of him wants to go find Lucy and pull her into him and not let her up for air until he's proven to her 1,000 times over that her feelings are returned. But part of him wonders what he did to earn this. Wonders what he has to do to keep it. Wonders if it's really okay for a person named Roronoa to love Monkey D. Lucy. He knows that's a bit maudlin. He knows she'd be angry with him for thinking it. He still can't quite help it. Fuck, he should have at least kissed her. His entire life, Zoro has been alone. He never had family, not even sensei, after Kuina died, because it was just too painful for his teacher when Zoro reminded him so much of her. And his closest friends were transient at best. Then Lucy waltzed into his life and that change. He hasn't been truly alone since the day he was freed from that post. Not even 2 years separation could change that. And he thought he was over this, and he's kind of annoyed at himself for lingering on these issues so much. But then she said that, and it somehow brought to mind all the times he wanted to hear someone say that to him. All the times he viciously repressed that longing with endless training or a sparring match until he forgot he even wanted it anymore. The part of him that remembers being born under a bad star can't quite believe he'd ever be this lucky. He believes Lucy. He does. He's just stunned. And he didn't realize how hearing those words would affect him. Zoro is bad with emotions. Okay. He's bad at them. Lucy's the only one he's ever been able to understand and communicate with easily. You okay there, son? One of the fishmen asked. Zoro looks around to see 6 empty casks of sake. He's so keyed up he barely feels a buzz. My captain told me she's in love with me, he informs the guard. I see. The fishman responds. It is clear that this is a lie. Is that bad? I didn't say it back. Oh, the guard says. There's something sympathetic in his terrified face. I'll be needing more sake, Zoro tells him, breaking open the nearest cask. This seems to spur the guard into motion. Bring the sake, bring all of the sake. Damn straight, Zoro grumbles, and he makes it through 5 more casks before he finally passes out. Shiro whatever reminds Lucy of Eneru, in a weird way. But where that guy was like a toddler playing with matches, this girl is like a child that was never allowed to run into things. She's strange, innocent, naive, and spoiled. She also wants to be free so badly Lucy can feel it in her chest. And Lucy's pretty sure now that herself. It's not that Lucy particularly likes the crybaby weakling. Actually the opposite is true. She finds her kind of annoying. But the thing is, Lucy's a pirate. She lives for adventure, and aches for the sea. She'd surely kill herself if she was locked up in the same room for 10 years. Plus, the girl fed Lucy, so that's a debt to be repaid. What the hell? Everybody deserves to have an adventure. Or at the very least, they deserve to go outside whenever they want. To the sea forest, Lucy declares. Admittedly, when Zoro accidentally takes over the castle, it's in part because he has a terrible hangover and everyone else is annoying him. He's still not hungover enough to ignore it when the people he's leveraging the castle against come knocking, though. Even if Usopp's screeching makes him want to cut things. I have a message for Straw Hat Lucy, the voice on the other end of the receiver intones, from First Son of the Sea, Jimbei. There's gasps that go up around him from his nakama, and he knows they recognize the name as well as he does. It showed up in the papers too frequently with Lucis. I'm her first mate, he grudges. I'll pass it on. First, don't fight Horty. Second, I'm waiting in the sea forest. Zoro shares a glance with Nami, and he sees the same sort of tension in her eyes that he feels himself. They know what happened in the war. They all know, thanks to that paper her damned father published, what happened to her. What she lost. They know, but they will never understand the way they need to. They weren't there. But Jimbei was. Jimbei knows what happened, and was there for her in a way they couldn't be. He might know why she's suddenly so fatalistic that she feels the need to blindside him with declarations of love. She's never been one to hold back when she knows how she feels and knows what she wants. She's always been impulsive and bold and direct, especially when it comes to him, so it's not exactly surprising that she'd react this way to this particular feeling, but I would have regretted it otherwise. Right, Zoro answers the prince. He's going to need to have a talk with Jinbei sometime. Or at least thank him, got it. The prince offers one last plea to leave their hostages unharmed, and Zoro hangs up, wondering how the hell he's supposed to talk to his captain about this, or if he even should. Fuck, she doesn't need to have this conversation now. She needed it 2 years ago. Lucy went through some hard times, huh? It's Usopp that speaks, and Zoro shoots a quelling glance at him. This is not the time to be worrying about it. We're with her now, Nami interjects, surprising Zoro. We won't let anything like that happen again. She looks at Zoro as she says it, her gaze sharp. We'll let her know we love her. Zoro flinches. He can't help it. Nami sighs, and takes a couple steps in his direction. She told me what she said, she whispers lowly. Zoro doesn't say anything, just glares, defensive. Nami's eyes are calculating, maybe understanding. She means it, you know. Zoro turns away from her, unwilling to let her see his expression. He does know, but now's not the time, he responds curtly. Nami huffs. You're impossible. But after a moment, she sighs again. But you're right. Usopp, go see if you can find the treasury. We're not taking stuff out of their treasury. Why not? They're our hostages. We took over this castle by accident. When Lucy sees her nakama in the cage, 2 things cross her mind. 1. Zoro looks kinda bored. Irritated, but bored, mostly. It makes her much less anxious than she otherwise would be. 2. This guy doesn't really think he's gonna get to just keep her nakama, right? She's not quite worried, exactly. Zoro will take care of Brook and Usopp, and those 2 aren't exactly helpless themselves. She wouldn't be surprised if they freed themselves by the time she gets to them. And she will be getting to them. If nothing else, she has to punch Horty in the face for trying to hurt them. Lucy's gotten more protective, she knows. 2 years ago she would have hit him until he gave her friends back and then left him alone. It didn't matter if they didn't get hurt, but now. Taking her nakama, just the effort to hurt them, is a crime. Horty's going to pay for it. Having Lucy's nakama gathered in one place again makes a knot of tension relax within her. One day she'll be strong enough to hold all of Fishman Island within the scope of her observation haki, and she'll never have to wonder again. Until then, having them together, safe, is a bomb. They haven't been reunited long enough for Lucy to feel comfortable apart from them yet. They're all gathered in a loose, informal formation behind her, the 10 of them facing an army of slaves and racists. Lucy was going to hit Horty anyway, but she's only doing it in this particular way for Jinbei's sake. She owes him, so even though playing the hero feels kind of odd and not exactly pirate-y and risks her crew more than necessary, she agreed. Now that she's got a lock on Horty and his commanders, now that she can hear their voices, she's not worried at all. 2 years ago, maybe she would have. 2 years ago, they would have been readying themselves for a difficult battle. But she can hear the bold potential and vibrancy and strength of her crew. She's counting Jinbei now. She has an offer to make him, and she can tell they're going to beat them. It's going to be a slaughter. The Straw Hats aren't the underdogs here. Conqueror's haki gives her a certain, alternate perception. One that shows her who has will and who does not. Her crew may not have conquerors, but they do have will. Zoro takes up a position beside her, and Sanji gathers on her other side. Jinbei looms prominent and visible in the middle, and the others close ranks around him, each readying weapons or gearing up to do battle in whatever way they fight. Her nakama have something to prove, she thinks. There's a tension swimming in each of their hearts. A promise to themselves, and maybe even to her. We won't be torn apart again. Lucy believes them. Lucy won't let it happen ever again either, at any rate. The poor bastards enslaved to Horty charge, all 100,000 of them, and for a moment she's on Marineford again, and there is only desperation and fire in the air as ice cracks beneath her gore-soaked feet. The parallel is stronger than she expected. This isn't Marineford, not even close. These enemies are ants beneath her feet, not giants and legends, and her treasure is behind her, powerful and safe, not dangled before her, prostrate and vulnerable. Still, it triggers something fierce and protective in her chest. Her nakama will not be touched by war. Not if Monkey D. Lucy has anything to say about it. 10,000 apiece? Easy. Zoro sneers at the cook. If you only get 10,000, I'll consider you a failure. Sanji turns to him and growls, affecting a supposed to be intimidating but really just annoying posture. You'll be lucky if you get 10, you shitty. Lucy shoves her way between them, looking down with her hat over her eyes and taking slow, purposeful steps forward. Both he and the cook give each other a glance before watching her. Lucy never bothers to break up their fights. More often she laughs, finds them entertaining. Not this time. This time Lucy is focused. 100,000 soldiers bear down on them. They don't hold a candle to Lucy's sheer presence. She steps out from their formation, toward the oncoming horde. Zoro carefully traces her form. There's a slight breeze through this pit, and her skirt sways with her hips. Ripples out behind her. She's holding her hat to her hair as black sweeps over her shoulders. She looks strong, even with 100,000 men rushing towards her. He can hear the click of her sandals, disproportionately loud in the thunderous roar of their approach. She walks smoothly, calmly, with purpose, but it's what he senses through observation haki that has him mentally staggering, unable to look away. Her voice Horace, the type religious fanatics describe when ranting about heaven and hell, the voices of angels and demons screaming as one in perfect unison, trembling across the octaves in a terrible blast of echoing force, a wall of willpower and determination that defies mankind and God alike. It sounds like a belfry, gold and ringing and echoing through the sky and sea to every shore in simple, frank, resounding declaration, I am here. Something hot and cold and sharp runs up his spine, almost painful, washes over him and his throat stutters on the gravity of sheer willpower. But he recognizes it, embraces it, knows this power like he knows its owner, and he respects them both, but he is unafraid. Confident in his own ability to withstand it and stand beside her. His mind screams, but it's much more than a simple predator that walks before him. It's a king just beginning her reign. A king, a king. The tidal wave crests and breaks, and around them there's a collective groan from the approaching soldiers and 50,000 men drop, frothing at the mouths and choking on the thick coil of haki. Lucy stops, feet spread apart in a strong stance, and looks up to Horty in silent challenge. With half his men taken out in a single, effortless, bloodless blow, the fishman looks shaken, and his commanders look sick. Zoro can't take his eyes off of her. Fuck, he wants to take her aside and what? Show her how he feels. Tell her how goddamn sxy she is when she makes the weak kneel before her. Tell her he's in love with her? To his left, Sanji whistles. I've never felt conquerors that powerful before. Zoro grins, fierce and proud, and part of him knows they'll never feel conquerors stronger than Lucis again, never. That's my captain. Oh fuck you, shitty swordsman. You didn't even respond when she confessed to you. Zoro splutters, growling. Why you, look, Sanji interrupts. Do you really think a girl like that doesn't know what she wants? Zoro hesitates. He has yet to take his eyes off his captain, still standing calmly at the center of 50,000 bodies taken down effortlessly. Obviously the answer to the shit cook's question is no, and short as Lucis' attention span can be sometimes, Lucis never been flighty. He knows she meant what she said, he knows. It's not that, he grumbles, still staring at his captain's back. He's not even certain as to why he's answering the shit cook in the first place. What, 2 years and you still haven't figured it out on your end? No, it's just, he shuts up, uncertain. Sanji sighs. You better figure it out soon, shit swordsman. I'm gonna kick your ass if you leave her hanging. You wish you could, curly brow. Twin fists rain down from an angry redhead. Shut up and fight, you idiots. Zoro has known for a while that Lucy has a truly baffling ability to communicate with large, dangerous animals, and befriend them. It's a constant about her. If anything, it's only a trait that's grown more prominent with time. Example A. Befriending the giant kraken. Yeah, even Zoro was a little surprised by that one. Maybe he shouldn't be so shocked, but he also did not anticipate that their friendship would have bloomed so quickly that Lucy would convince Tsurume to fight with her rather than serve a man holding her brother hostage. Hey, Tsurume, is it your older brother or your younger? Lucy's smile is fixed. I had an older one, myself. And just like that, Zoro is ready to murder Horde, everyone involved in the war, the entire fucking world. Lucy didn't have soft spots like this before. Zoro wants to destroy the things that put them there. Did you forget? I'm your friend. Something in the tone of her voice, cheerful as it is, makes him think of her conqueror's haki, and the thrill it gives him running up his spine. The low rumble of a predator echoes off of her as she stalks toward Horde, threatening even though he knows now that she's masking the true breadth of it. The fucker is too much of a coward to fight her. He knows how outclassed he is. Kick his ass, Sencho, Zoro growls to her, deflecting anything that could distract her approach as he goes. Her fixed smile curls down into a snarl. Always, she promises, and rushes forward to meet her opponent while Zoro defends her back. Please help her, Lucy-sama won't stop bleeding. Zoro's head whips around so fast he nearly cricks it. That's. The mermaid princess swims toward them, frantic and tearful. There's something cupped in her hands, and there's red dripping out between her fingers. Zoro rushes to meet her, and the rest of the crew thunders behind him. When they get to the princess, she sets their captain down carefully before them, as gentle as she can possibly be. She's a mess. She's soaking wet and covered in blood. There's a wound in her shoulder, one that sits too close to her jugular for comfort. It reminds him of Arlong Park a little. The wounds are similar, though it's definitely worse this time, and her cheeks are unhealthily pale and her breathing shallow. Robin helps Chopper maneuver around to treat her, and feeling sick, Zoro takes a knee by her head and reaches out to readjust the hat squished beneath her. She doesn't stir, doesn't even acknowledge that she's noticed him or anyone else. How is she, Chopper? He grunts lowly. He can't stop looking at her face. I can stop the bleeding, but there's a moment of hesitation. She needs a blood transfusion, and the Sunny doesn't have any reserves yet. No one else on the crew is blood type F, Nami whispers behind him, horrified. The fishmen, she can use their blood, right? Right, but the law. Please, Chopper screams, desperate. Anyone, please. If you have blood type F, please allow us to give some to Lucy. Zoro still doesn't look away from Lucy's face, but he notices the distinct lack of response from the literally thousands of people gathered around. No one. Lucy's blood type isn't rare, if the fishmen have compatible bodies. Zoro stands, looks up to the crowd, and glares, letting his aura bleed into the air. I'll force you, he promises. I'll take one of you and slice you open, jam a needle in your arm and bleed you dry to save her. I won't regret it for a second. The fishmen tremble, terrified, but none of them step forward. Zoro slides a hand down to his katana, loosening Kitetsu as he howls in his ears with rage and agony at Lucy's condition, feeding his silent, tempestuous rage. You're scaring them, Zoro, Nami hisses. What if they don't? Take mine, a low voice rumbles, and Zoro looks up to see Jinbei lumbering toward them. There's a murmur from the crowd of fishmen, but no one tries to stop him, and Zoro relaxes his grip, reins in his aura. There's a sigh from behind him, and he hears Usopp give a shaky exhale. Geez, Zoro, give us all heart attacks, why don't you? Zoro ignores him, watching as Jinbei sits down next to Lucy, with Chopper and Robin between them. Take as much as you need, he tells the doctor. She must live. Lucy will be Pirate King. Jinbei sounds a little like he did then. An echo of that faith is there in the fishman's glassy eyes. Chopper works quickly, binding Lucy's wounds and then inserting a needle in her arm. Zoro and the rest of their nakama stand back, giving him space and hovering all the same. You've saved her before, right? Zoro asks, quiet and solemn as he stares at the other man. The ex-warlord looks up at him, curious. I suppose. We're friends. He sounds so bewildered by that simple fact that Zoro feels his lips twitch despite himself. People generally don't survive contact with Lucy without becoming her friend or her enemy. Looks like Jinbei is no exception. Thank you, he says, meaning it. Jinbei looks up as Chopper inserts a needle in his arm, and soon thick red fluid flows out into the tube. The fishman nods, maybe a bit hesitant, but Zoro knows they've reached an understanding. He's completely unsurprised when Lucy rouses herself just long enough to extend Jinbei an invitation to join up, and if he wasn't so at the dumbfounded expression on Jinbei's face. You're heroes. Crybaby cheers. Don't you want to be honored as such? Look, I don't want to be a hero, Zoro grouses. A hero has to share the booze, but I want all of the booze, ya see? Lucy beams at him. Zoro just gets her. Nami just groans. You two deserve each other. Hours later, after there's been much feasting and merrymaking and dancing, Lucy finds a group of her nakama gathered on one of the castle's many patios and porches. This palace is cool. Lucy can tell it's remained untouched for a long time. Nami is sitting with Usopp across from Jinbei. Zoro lays spread eagle a few feet away, snoring and still gripping a bottle of sake in his left hand. Lucy grins and drags her pilfered food toward him. She loudly throws her pile down next to him, and sits so the small of her back is pressed to his ribcage. For the record, she thinks his robe is completely unfair. She was already having trouble repressing thoughts on how easy it would be to slip her fingers under the fabric and push it off his shoulders before he decided to fight shirtless. Zoro did not waste the last 2 years of training time, damn. Zoro grunts a little in his sleep at her intrusion, his right hand twitches. Lucy sticks a chicken leg in her mouth and reaches out to run her fingers through his hair. She likes it long like this, it looks good on him. Zoro tips his chin up a little, then relaxes again. Lucy is pretty sure the look on her face is gooey and fond, even considering the chicken leg still sticking out of her mouth. She likes being able to touch him again, it feels soothing. She looks up to see Nami and Jinbei finishing up their conversation. Something about admirals fighting in an island they smashed. They keep giving Lucy and Zoro small glances as they talk, Jinbei inscrutable and vaguely disapproving, and Nami exasperated. Lucy's hand slows in Zoro's hair, and she goes for an apple instead. Then Zoro turns in his sleep, a bottle clinks softly against the ground, and the next thing Lucy knows she has 2 arms clamped around her and her back is pressed against the hard planes of her swordsman's stomach. Lucy squeaks a little, surprised, and instinctively she wriggles a bit in protest. Zoro's arms just tighten possessively and she feels his stomach contract a little as he brings his knees up to curl around her. Lucy looks down at him, a bit bewildered, but she relaxes into him a little all the same. He's got his head propped on his shoulder in a way that looks kind of uncomfortable, but the frown creasing his brow relaxes and he seems peaceful enough. Well, this makes it easier to pet him, at least, and it is kind of comforting, being surrounded by him like this. She hopes she didn't scare him too bad today. She didn't mean to pass out from blood loss a few measly hours after she told him she loves him, but that's why she did that as soon as she got the opportunity. I swear, Nami interjects, you're literally the only thing that could get him to drop his booze. Lucy looks up at her nakama and grins. I give Zoro meat too. Nami rolls her eyes. A declaration of love if I've ever heard one. Jinbei's face is a bit hesitant as he studies the two of them, and then he says the last thing Lucy ever expected. Ace-san mentioned this, Jinbei said lowly, he approved. Lucy freezes, a piece of pie halfway to her mouth as she stares at Jinbei wide-eyed. Ace. Knew? She asks, feeling a little blindsided. Not because Jinbei mentioned Ace, but more because Ace mentioned her and Zoro specifically. They only met in Alabasta, and we weren't. A pause. It was, earlier on. Nami snorts, obviously amused. It's not like either of you were subtle. He asked me at the time if you two were together. I think he was a little hurt thinking you hadn't told him. I set him straight though. Lucy blinks at her, a small happy feeling blooming inside her. It's not that she's thought about it a whole lot, because she loves Zoro independently of Ace and in an entirely different way, but she always kind of hoped Ace would approve. She recalls feeling little flutters of anticipation and nerves introducing them even back in Alabasta. You guys talked then? Nami asks, raising a glass of wine to her lips. Lucy cards her fingers through Zoro's hair absent-mindedly, fishing one of the meat tarts off the pile. Nope. Nami blinks, surprised. So he hasn't. Nami shakes her head. Doesn't that bother you? Not having an answer? Lucy stares at her navigator blank-faced. Zoro is Zoro. Nami groans, face-palming. You two are the most bewilderingly together not together people I have ever met. You're both idiots. Is it wise, though? Jinbei queries, rumbling in that low voice he has. A captain and her subordinate. Most ships have rules about this sort of thing. Such relationships can be messy. Lucy stares, utterly bewildered. Subordinate. Jimbei raises an eyebrow. The crew is subordinate to the captain, of course. A captain must always command respect from the rest of the crew, must make the hardest decisions. Appearing like a mere mortal to the crew members can cause disruptions and calamity. Such a relationship would qualify. Lucy cocks her head, staring at Jimbei hard. Then she realizes what he's getting at and laughs. Oh, you mean like with Usopp? Nah, that's all fixed now. And my Nakama know me better than that anyway. Nami nods. I actually can't picture what the crew would be like if you and Zoro weren't the way you were. Then she turns to Jimbei. You better give up on the whole superior stuff anyway, Jimbei. Lucy doesn't get it. And stop trying to sabotage all my hard work trying to get them together. It's just not done. Jimbei tries one last time. Lucy snorts. Those rules sound dumb anyway. I'm going to be Pirate King, so I'll be free. Which means Zoro and I can do whatever we want. If only you would, Usopp groans, joining them. He has a tankard in one hand that probably doesn't contain liquor and a plate of food in another. It would be easier on the rest of us, not having to trip over all your sexual frustration. Zoro is very sxy. Lucy agrees. Usopp chokes on his drink at her response. And Lucy ignores him. She leans forward for food a little too much, tipping up on her crossed legs just enough to leave a gap of space between herself and her swordsman. She's yanked back immediately, rocking heavily into Zoro's chest and stomach as her Nakama growls lowly in his sleep, his whole body tensing until Lucy runs light fingers down his neck. She kind of likes grabby Zoro. Probably wouldn't if her rubber abilities didn't allow her to snatch food from anywhere in the vicinity, but she does. See, Jimbei? Nami asks. You can't tell me you think there ever going to be anything else. The fishman doesn't respond to her, his expression inscrutable as his gaze locks on Lucy. Lucy-san, Jimbei starts, uncertain. Do you remember what fishnets represent to us fish folk? Lucy looks at him, confused. Not really, it was bad, right? Jimbei nods, expression grave. Humans used to dress us in nothing but those nets when placed on the market. It was demeaning in two ways. First, it was a reminder that fishmen were nothing more than sentient fish to those above, and shouldn't be treated as people. Secondly, it was used to display physical assets, whatever that may be. For centuries, fish nets have represented nothing to us but dehumanization, and the institution which has forced us to the bottom of the sea. Today, Jimbei takes a deep breath. Today I saw a few small children, wearing fishnet skirts and straw hats as they played. Her fishman gives her a smile, and it reminds her of the one he shared when she told him she wanted to see her friends again. I suppose if you can undo all that in a single day, no real rules apply. They're stupid rules anyway, Lucy tells him, agreeing as one hand absently smooths the hair at Zoro's temple. She really likes his hair. What captain blames dissension on being close to their crew? Stupid. Then laughs, uproarious and loud. Ha! Indeed, Lucy-san. What captain indeed? His expression becomes warm. I can't wait to join your crew, Lucy-san. But I'm afraid I must finish some responsibilities here first. Lucy understands. Jimbei is easily the most high-profile figure she's ever recruited to her crew, and he probably has the most prominent place in society of all of them too. It doesn't matter, of course. Lucy felt for a while that Jimbei should be on her crew, having realized some 6 months into her training on Ruskina that the "oh, this one's mine" feeling happened sometime between "Ace is dead" and "well, of course you do, but it is different." It means Lucy has to wait a little longer to bring him along, take him under her protection. She has a feeling Jimbei thinks the same regarding her, which, cute. You'll always have a place on my ship, Jimbei, she tells him, beaming. The way her conscious Nakama grin and Jimbei blushes under his blue skin tell her that spot will be filled soon enough. Zoro watches as Lucy carefully extricates herself from the mermaid princess. He can tell Lucy likes her, and Zoro gets why. Aside from Lucy generally liking everyone who doesn't give her a reason not to, but Zoro personally finds her kind of annoying. Zoro's not a fan of needy people. He feels a little needy himself, actually. It's kind of frustrating, but he tenses up whenever she isn't in his line of sight. It's not fair, exactly. He's a little annoyed they haven't resumed their easy relationship immediately, But he can't quite stop the rising anxiety when she's absent, even when he can sense her easily using haki. It'll pass eventually. He hopes so, at least. He just wants to move on from those 2 years. He must be staring particularly hard, because Nami walks up to him with a frown on her face and her hands on her hips. Zoro raises an eyebrow at her. Nami glares. Zoro scowls. What? You're going to tell her, right? She asks, and there's definitely something threatening about this. Tell who what? He retorts. And yeah, he can guess, but it's not really in Zoro's nature to make a thing like this easy. Tell Lucy, Nami says slowly, like he's a very stupid child, how you feel. Zoro tries to hold Nami's gaze, and can't. The navigator just sighs, relaxing in an exasperated, tired sort of way not dissimilar to what Zoro's seen mothers with small children do. Then she squares her shoulders and pins him with a resolute look that reminds him, bizarrely, of their captain, and says the last thing he ever expected. When we first met, my first thought was, they're cute together, for pirates. Zoro thinks about that for half a second, and then blinks, staring. I mean, it made sense, Nami continues, heedless, making expressive hand gestures all the while. You two certainly acted like you were together. Zoro is not exactly blushing, but he does shift uncomfortably, embarrassed. I thought the same thing, Usopp says, arriving out of nowhere. His nose wrinkles as he recalls the memory. Nami had to set me straight. Zoro frowns. Forcefully. I thought so too, sword bro. Figured out you weren't after I joined up, but I was surprised. The swordsman turns, wheeling on Frankie. You didn't even see us together, Zoro protests, irritated. I saw you guys after we got back to Water 7. The shipwright shrugs, unconcerned. You seemed very together. I thought it was cute. Young love, he sniffs, getting emotional. It's so sweet. You've been in love with her since at least Kokoyashi, Sanji agrees, sidling up to the group. The cook takes an easy drag of his cigarette, apparently completely unconcerned about Zoro's threatening posture and glare. It pained me, because I could tell our darling captain felt similarly. Sanji's gaze turns sharp, and Zoro is a little surprised at the seriousness there. I decided then that if you hurt her in any way, I'd kill you. As if, shit cook, Zoro growls, and for a moment he thinks the cook is going to oblige him and let him pick a fight. But then he's stopped by Chopper, jumping between them and strangling Zoro with a big hug. I've always thought you and Lucy would be good mates, Chopper squeals, making Zoro freeze, thinking of Skypia and an awkward conversation around an injured, unconscious Lucy. I've always thought it's nice that humans are monogamous. Reindeer don't mate for life, but humans do, and you and Lucy always smell like each other anyway, so you should just be mates already. Zoro tries to throw Chopper off without looking like he's throwing Chopper off, because even in his new Monster Man form, he's still got a fluffy creature big eyes do not harm do not vibe about him. He is unsuccessful and resorts to growling defensively. You're all assuming a lot. Maybe I don't feel the same, huh? There's a moment of silence, and then a chiding sound as Robin clicks her tongue. Really, Zoro, there's only so far we're willing to suspend our disbelief. I can smell you like each other, Chopper agrees, nodding sagely. Sometimes one or both of you want to mate with each other really bad, but then you don't, and it smells like your pheromones for a really long time. The whole crew freezes at that, giving Chopper a horrified look. Chopper seems to not understand why. What? It happens with everyone. Chopper scrunches his nose. Humans stink. As one, the crew decides to collectively forget Chopper ever said anything about his sense of smell, ever. Look, Sword Bro, you've obviously been holding onto these feelings for a while, Frankie says sagely, and Zoro is suddenly reminded that their shipwright is nearly twice his age. It's easy to forget when he acts as childishly as he does, but Frankie can also be surprisingly wise, too. You should talk to her, it'll be easier then. Zoro feels something like a trapped animal, or trapped by an animal, considering Chopper is still hugging him and refusing to let him go. But he can't quite find it in him to lash out at the crew, and he settles for glaring, resentful. It's not like you can be afraid of rejection, Nami agrees. She's already told you how she feels. If you dare reject Lucy-san's affections for something so stupid as your pride, I will end you. And I'll help, Nami agrees. I've got money riding on this. Please don't make us avoid your sexual tension again, Usopp begs. Please. Lucy gets this look on her face and then she's impossible to deal with until she burns off the excess energy. I'd much rather just shove the two of you in the storeroom. We tried that once, remember? Nami reminds him. We found them 4 hours later cuddling on the floor, fully clothed. They're disgustingly cute and respectful of each other. Zoro blinks, vaguely recalling a memory of a tiny utility room with no light and Lucy pressed against his chest. She napped on him enough that it wasn't that out of the ordinary, but it was notable for the complete lack of space. That was you? I forgot about that, Usopp mutters, shaking his head as if to dispel the memory. Lucy was being impossible. I can't believe that didn't work. Zoro growls. Don't you people have anything better to do? No, the crew answers collectively. Brooke, who has somehow taken on a mediation role that Robin is far too much of a troll to adequately fill, lays a hand on Zoro's shoulder. Admitting feelings can be difficult, Zoro-san. Brooke says quietly, but well worth it in the end. Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? With Lucy he's never had to explain anything, they just understand. He loves her, it seems like she should just know. Lucy finally pulls herself away from Shirahoshi, promising a walk above the waves next time they meet. The smile on her face is brilliant and something in Zoro softens in response. Ah, we've got him, Nami coos. I think it is more accurate to say that she's got him, Robin counters. And yeah, she should know. 3 hours into their voyage to the surface, the new world, Lucy finds herself in front of the aquarium again. She's sitting on the floor, right in the center of the room, with her hands loosely circling her ankles and her chin on her knees. It's dark in here, except for the flickering glow of the tank. She can think here, and still keep an eye on her nakama as they're scattered across the ship. She'd maybe be on Sunny's figurehead if it wasn't underwater right now, because she just needs a moment. Nami is in her library. Robin is taking a shower. Sanji is in the kitchen, and Usopp and Frankie are working on something below deck that's guaranteed to be awesome. Brooke is playing music on the stern, something lively and anticipatory and still somehow sweet. Chopper is in his infirmary. Chopper loves his infirmary, which Lucy supposes makes sense, but she can't go into that room and not recall Zoro after Thriller Bark. Zoro. Zoro is at the open door, watching her. Lucy turns around, cocking her head. He's leaning against the door frame, arms crossed over his chest. His face is shadowed in this light, but she still sees the glimmer of a silver eye boring into her. He looks tense. Observation Haki confirms it. But she doesn't mind him looking at her, so she turns her attention back to the aquarium after offering him a bright smile. She kind of wishes he would come closer so she could cuddle him or something, but having him at her back is the last thing Lucy will ever dislike. Heavy booted footsteps plod behind her, and then she looks over to see Zoro folding himself into a lotus position on her right, facing the fish tank. Lucy looks at him, curious. The tension in him makes Zoro difficult to read, even with observation Haki. He swallows. Lucy's eyes trace the bob of his Adam's apple. About what you said last time. Lucy's eyes widen a bit, surprised, and a flutter of anticipation bubbles up in her stomach. She never really expected Zoro to outright address this. She figured he would process it in whatever way he wanted and then get frustrated and just grab her at some point and then they'd be off, acting mostly the same but touching more and indulging all those impulses she used to push down. But clearly, Zoro has something he wants to say, so she stays quiet and listens. When I was a kid there was a girl in my dojo, she was good. Beat me every time I challenged her, but she was scared, too, because she thought that being a girl meant she'd never be able to be a great swordsman. We promised one of us would do it, become the world's greatest, and then she died. I promised on her sword that I'd do it for both of us. Zoro shifts, looking terribly uncomfortable. Lucy kind of wants to stop him, tell him he doesn't need to tell her any of this if he doesn't want to, but she doesn't dare speak. When I heard what happened to you, I knew I had to get stronger. Lucy really wishes she could see his eye. Zoro has a very expressive eye. Zoro. My entire life I've been alone with a dream and my best friend's dead potential. He cuts harshly, not giving her a moment to respond. Then there was you and... He stops, turning his head so she can't see any part of his face. Lucy doesn't need this, doesn't need Zoro to vivisect himself for her, and she finally acts. scrambling to kneel in front of him and lifting her palms to his face. He jerks at her touch, but she's successful in getting him to look at her, and that's all that matters. I trained with Mihawk, he tells her, eye burning. Lucy gasps, horrified, heart dropping all the way to her toes. These last 2 years. I trained with my enemy so I could protect you, and I don't regret it. Lucy doesn't even notice that she's crying as she stares at him in stupefied horror until Zoro's face cracks in its resolve and his hand comes up to cup her cheek, awkward and endearing. Shit, I didn't mean, stop crying Lucy, I told you I don't regret. Your dream, Lucy whispers, because she knows what he gave up for her, what he sacrificed, and it's so much greater than the greatest price, and he just told her what it means to him, why he can't back down, ever, from the path he chose. I never wanted. Zoro shakes his head rapidly, interrupting. I promised back at the Bharati, didn't I? Zoro's hands curl around her neck, thumbs caressing her tear-dampened jaw. I lost then, but Mihawk asked what I would use my strength for when I reached the top, and me and my dream have been tied to you and yours for a long time. She's silent then, but she can't quite stop the tears, and he swallows again, his face tender but creased in sudden discomfort. Another swallow. Damn it, why is this so hard? I know Lucy's eyes widen when she realizes what he's trying to voice, and she can't help it when she throws herself at him. Arms wrapping around his broad shoulders and her legs around his waist as she pushes her face into his chest, cheek pressed against the rapid thudding of his heart. Zoro's hands settle instantly across her back, wrapping around her and pulling her into his body like they were made for it. Like he can't help doing anything else. You said it, so you deserve. Lucy giggles, tears still falling, because Zoro can be so dumb sometimes. You have, she assures him. 1,000 times over. Don't worry, Zoro. I heard you. She presses her lips to his chest in promise, assurance. Beneath her, Zoro shudders and the places where his skin brushes hers are on fire, and he shoves her back, hands gripping her hips hard enough to bruise, and she gives a yelp of protest right until she sees the determined, blazing expression on his face, violent and focused and just like the one he gets in a good fight, the one that makes her body feel like it's on fire, and then his hand is on her neck, dragging her head toward his, and his lips are attached to hers, rough and insistent and messy and perfect. Lucy gasps, her eyes sliding shut immediately, and she thinks she might be melting, dying from the terrible sense of rightness cresting over her. And Zoro's hands are on her back and dragging calluses against her skin, and she. The helpless whine that escapes her throat, fueled in equal measure by the swell of emotion that rises in her chest and the desire that burns her veins, surprises her. She feels Zoro shiver in response, his tongue pressing into her mouth, demanding and uncompromising. Lucy responds enthusiastically, scrabbling nails against his shoulders and pulling herself up in his grip for a better angle, canting her head so her lips slot over his, her heart clanging in her ears. She can tell he likes it because his hand comes up to tangle in her hair, trapping her against him, and her desire and sense of completion and wholeness grows as everything around her becomes Zoro, Zoro, Zoro. She presses into him as close as she can, their bodies fused from shoulder to hip, her knees on either side of his waist as she pushes up for leverage. His arm is a vice against her back and he bends her over it a little, stretching her against him, and she whimpers into his mouth as her bare stomach brushes against his. The robe pushed aside by their activities, and he growls. Low and insistent and promising, and it makes heat pool in her belly, and she squirms in his lap in a way that has his hand clutching her hip convulsively, like he can't decide if he wants to push her off or pull her down and into him. And she feels his shuddering restraint in the tremble of his shoulders and the way his tongue caresses hers as she fumbles through the unfamiliar motion. So gentle compared to the rest of him, and her teeth clack against his in messy, enthusiastic demand. Lucy is getting lightheaded now though, trying to breathe through her nose and failing because the only thing she gets then is more Zoro, smelling like blood and sake and steel and salty, musky sweat, and it only makes her want him more, even as stars ignite behind her eyelids and her lungs scream for air because she thinks if it would probably be worth it. But Zoro seems to realize she needs to breathe, or maybe he does too, and he pulls back. Lucy gives a sharp noise of protest and tries to follow his mouth with hers, but he doesn't let her, just keeps her forehead pressed against his with his hand like he's inexplicably afraid she'll run away if he lets go. That's ridiculous, because the only thing Lucy wants to do right now is get closer, as close as possible, so close she can't tell where one of them stops and the other begins. They're both breathing hard, puffing warm breaths into the scant space between their lips, and Lucy is trying to figure out if she's dreaming, if this will all disappear when she opens her eyes. Lucy has never been a coward though, and like she's breaking through a hazy fog of want and passion and love, so much love, she opens her eyes to look at her swordsman. He's flushed, and his eye is slanted open, staring into hers in a manner that reminds her of a dying man finding a cure for death. He's so beautiful her breath catches, and she ducks forward to press a few small pecks in quick succession to his mouth. His clothes are disheveled and his hair messy, and his silver eye burning into hers like molten metal. "You're good at this," she tells him shakily. Her whole body feels like it's exploding over and over and over again with every scrape of his skin. "Want you," he promises breathily, his fingers pressing into her flesh like he's trying to prove how much, and he must feel the shiver that racks her in response to the gravel in his voice. "Want you," he repeats, voice a little lower, and then there's a smug smirk on his lips that she wants to kiss off. The leather was unnecessary. The hand at her hip slides up a little, skims the skin of her waist so softly it makes her shiver, until his thumb grazes the edge of the black leather band around her breasts. Lucy grins, and Zoro's smug expression fractures into something that looks a little devastated. "Gift from Hancock." His grip on her waist turns stronger, possessive, and the hand tangled in her hair gently tilts her head to the side so Zoro can graze the underside of her jaw with his lips, just barely brushing skin against skin, and Lucy shudders again, feeling fuzzy and warm and kind of delirious. Then Zoro presses a gentle kiss against her pulse point, and she gasps because she feels loved, so loved it hurts. Her eyes burn with tears, the kind that only come when she's feeling too many good things at once. The only thing that keeps her from crying is the knowledge that Zoro will panic and stop if she does, and she really doesn't want that, not with the way the kisses against the column of her throat have become hot and open-mouthed, tongue laving the fragile skin there while the hand drawing little circles in her back sinks lower with each pass in a manner that makes her toes curl with anticipation and want. Lucy considers the angle of her mouth and his ear, wondering if she'll finally be able to discover if taking his earrings between her teeth and sucking on his earlobe will engender the reaction she's always thought it might. Lucy's just gotten it in her mind to try while she still has enough wits about her to try and seduce him when a soft ping echoes around the room and Lucy looks up to see the little service elevator open and a tray is displayed. Lucy frowns, noticing something on it, and uses her abilities to stretch out and snatch the tray. Zoro, noticing her distraction, gives a disgruntled growl and lifts his head to inspect the intrusion, both arms moving to wrap around Lucy's waist, keeping her pressed against him. Lucy notes with interest that at some point she must have pushed Zoro's robe down off his shoulder because the sleeve is pulling around his elbow and it makes him look debauched and exposes skin that Lucy wants to drag her nails across and… "What's that?" he grouses, nodding to the tray. Lucy looks down, twisting a bit in Zoro's grip even as her knees clamp around his waist to make sure they don't separate too much. Zoro's jaw flexes like he notices, and Lucy grins a little as she looks at the objects. There's 2 notes in a box, and Lucy takes up the first note, immediately spotting Sanji's handwriting and that it's addressed to Zoro. "Here," she tells him, holding it up between them so he can read it without releasing her. He scowls when he realizes who it's from, and Lucy picks up the other note, Chopper's handwriting this time, and she flushes when she reads it and realizes exactly what's in the box. Chopper wants us to practice safe SX, she tells Zoro, looking up to gauge his reaction, which is when she realizes he's shaking a bit, trembling, and Lucy pulls the note away to get a better look at his face. It's creased in irritation and something bordering on rage, which is a lot more anger than even Sanji usually gets, and she tilts her head to the side, confused. Zoro, his large hands slide under her rear, lifting her up into his waist as he stands in one easy motion. Lucy squeaks, thrown, and instinctively latches her arms around his neck and her legs around his waist as he moves. He doesn't give her a second to respond as the world tilts and she finds herself flat on her back on the couch, Zoro hovering over her with a thunderous expression on his face. Maybe that would excite her, under different circumstances, but it's different now, the look in his eyes. It's darker than it was, And not in a lustful sort of way, more angry. Like he's trying to prove a point or stake a claim or something. The tenderness is missing. Lucy frowns. What's wrong? What did Sanji? Zoro's face tightens, and then his lips are pressed to Lucy's, shutting her up and muffling her protests and trying to distract her with a hand running down her waist. But much as it feels like he wants her, it also feels like he's ignoring her. Lucy doesn't like that much. She wants Zoro focused on her, mostly always but especially right now, so she does something about it. Zoro jerks back, scrambling away from her as she releases his lower lip from between her canines. Fuck, you bit me, he complains, and Lucy feels a little bad because she can taste his blood on her teeth, and while that's kind of hot in a way, she's also annoyed. You were ignoring me, she accuses, pouting a little. What was in the note? Zoro glares at her, blood still welling in the little wound Lucy inflicted. Nothing. Shit cook being shit cook. His gaze becomes heavy and dark again, his eye boring into Lucy's. I don't want to talk about it. Lucy frowns. He made you mad. Really mad. What was in the note? Nothing, just drop it already. Lucy scowls, and then tightens her grip around his hips and shoulders, using her gum abilities to twine herself in inextricable rubbery knots around his torso. Lucy, what? Tell me. No, not gonna stop till you do. She wraps her limbs around him a couple more times for emphasis. Fine. He growls, trying to pry her rubbery arms off without much success. Lucy nods into his shoulder, where her head ended up, and unwraps herself, dropping back to the couch beneath him. She smooths her hands across his shoulders, and his hips are still settled between her legs, but she can see his eye now. He gets one glance at her face before his irritated expression breaks into something more uncertain. Lucy waits, because Zoro told her he would tell her, and so he would. The fucking cook was. He wrote some. Tips. Zoro's face darkens again, and Lucy starts playing with the nape of his neck to regain his attention. It works a little, but there's still something of a crazed gleam in his eye. They were specific. To you. And detailed. He grimaces, and his face darkens, like he's considering ignoring her again. So why are you upset? She asks, smoothing the skin between his shoulders, hoping to ground him a little. Yeah, that sounds a bit tactless, but Sanji was probably just trying to get a rise out of him, or to tell Zoro he'd kill him if he hurt her or something. Zoro would never willingly hurt her, and Sanji isn't responsible for her, and Lucy can take care of herself anyway, but it's not anything Zoro needs to get so upset about. Zoro's face flushes a little, and he surprises her by ducking down so their chests are flush and presses his face into her hair, effectively masking his expression. His thumb strokes her hip bone reassuringly though, so she knows he's not ignoring her, and his lips brush the line of her throat as he speaks. The stuff he said, he would have had to think about you. A lot. Like this. Lucy gasps despite herself when she feels the flash of teeth against her jugular, and she clutches the back of Zoro's robe in her fists, a little helpless at the sensation. Then Lucy realizes what he's saying, and gives the side of his head, not the one with his earrings, regrettably, a disbelieving look. You're jealous? Not exactly, he grunts. I just don't want him to think of you that way. Two large hands clench around her hips, fingers digging into the flesh of her rear. I don't want anyone to think of you that way. You're Zoro cuts himself off, and from the sudden tension in his frame, she knows he didn't mean to say that. Lucy can guess though, from the desperate way his mouth latches to her neck and the bruises he's leaving on her thigh, exactly what he refrained from saying. Leveraging herself against the couch, she uses her abs and hips to push him back, and it catches him so off guard she manages to pin him against the couch cushions and pounce on him so she's sitting in his lap again, this time frowning down at him and gripping his shoulders so hard her nails drop blood. Zoro is mine, she growls, possessive and hungry and uncompromising, taking ownership of the word Zoro hesitated to say aloud. Her swordsman's pupil dilates in surprise, his face going a bit slack with shock and an insecurity she's sure he doesn't mean to show. Just like I'm Zoro's. She expects him to start manhandling her again, expects he would be kind of turned on by her statement and that they'd maybe make use of the box chopper scent. She doesn't expect him to freeze, just like when she told him she loves him, She doesn't expect the insecurity in his expression to turn vulnerable and tender in a way she's never seen before, or for him to raise a shaking palm to her face in the gentlest way possible. She doesn't expect the wet gleam in his eye, or the way he presses his lips together in a tight line, like he's trying to stop them from trembling. Lucy's lingering irritation and possessiveness are sapped away immediately, leaving only affection and fondness and love. So much love for this man, and maybe a little confusion at this reaction, too. She raises one hand to press his palm to her cheek, turning her face a little to kiss the inside of his wrist. His lips part silently, and she sees his eye trace the movement, not hungrily, like a minute ago, but wonderingly, and maybe a bit awestruck. His hand moves to her neck and he leans forward a little, so his forehead is pressed into the space between her collarbone and the line of her shoulder. Lucy's hands go instinctively to the back of his head, cradling him to her like she might a child in need of a hug, running her fingers through his hair soothingly. Zoro's arms wrap around her, and he pulls her body into the crescent of his as he trembles, something almost visibly shifting inside him. Lucy lets him, doesn't say anything except a quiet litany of the same words over and over. Mine, mine, Zoro is mine, I'm Zoro's, I love Zoro. If she says it enough, she's sure he'll believe it. He never cries. At least she thinks he doesn't, and she's sure she would feel it if he actually shed tears. But then she thinks this might be Zoro's version of crying, thinks maybe this is the same kind of catharsis, just in a different form. She's seen it before, in smaller doses, but she never realized exactly what it was when he used to hold her a little too tight after scaring him badly and his normal fussing didn't quite cut it. She never knew he was crying, and she knows he preferred it that way, but not anymore because they're them. And she knows now, and she knows how to spot it and comfort him. I won't let you be alone, she thinks fiercely, never again. Eventually he calms, his breathing steadies, and his grip on her becomes a little surer, a little less desperate and disbelieving. Lucy quiets, waiting for him to speak on his own and sensing he needs her cooperation to compose himself. She's rewarded when his thumb traces the divot of her spine, the action sure and calming. His voice floats up between them, rough and quiet. Mine, huh? Lucy nods, and thinks Zoro could use a little levity. I could get a tattoo if you want. On my butt. Property of Roronoa Zoro, she tests, and he chokes on something that might be laughter or surprise or want. Lucy smirks, fingers still playing with his hair. Or maybe I could get earrings that match yours. Or wear one of your earrings. But I like yours where they are and I'd have to get my ears pierced. Or I could just start wearing your t-shirts and my shorts. Oh, or your bandana. I could tie it around my thigh or something, like a garter. I'm sure everyone would get the message then. Stop, just stop, he protests, and he's shaking again, but this time he's laughing, not crying, and Lucy's proud of her handiwork when he lifts his head from her chest and he's smiling. You're going to tempt me. I don't mind, she tells him, not actually joking. She kind of likes the idea of wearing his bandana, actually, but she wants him to have it when he needs it, so she probably can't. His smile turns slightly more humored. I'm not going to ask you to do any of that, he promises. Lucy shrugs. I don't mind, she insists. I love you, so I don't mind. There's a flare of heat in his eye, but mostly his face just turns overwhelmingly tender, a vulnerability and openness there that she's never seen so frankly before. Lucy smiles at him, her breath catching somewhere in her throat as he takes her chin between his thumb and forefinger, and guides her lips to his. There's a split second's hesitation before their lips meet, the barest space between them. Or maybe it's not hesitation that gives them that pause half a heartbeat long, but anticipation and reverence. Lucy doesn't know, doesn't care, but the pause gives her time to remember the thousands of times she's dreamed of this, longed for him, ached for this moment right here. And then Zoro's fingers drag her forward the final few centimeters and she is lost and so found. This kiss is tender and sweet in the way the first one was desperate, a slow caress of light pressure and promise. It's like an oath, a seal rather than a frantic melding of people. There's no open-mouthed heat or keens for more. It's full of reassurance, banked longing, relief, awe, and maybe a little bit of an apology as his hand smooths down the bruises on her thigh and she mouths gently at the wound she left in his lower lip. The kiss breaks down quickly, both of them emotionally spent and tired and satisfied, and soon they're leaning back on the couch. Lucy tucked into his lap, her face hidden in his neck, her feet tucked under his thighs and her arms around his waist. She can't help dropping kisses on him every few seconds, and he's got both arms around her, one hand drawing small, absent-minded circles in her side. She's got a big, sappy grin on her face, and she's sure Zoro does too, even if his version is more restrained. "I've never, had anyone before," he admits into the quiet after a few minutes. She's happy he sounds better, less unstable. "You're the first." Lucy frowns because she can imagine Zoro as a kid, angry and alone and missing an Ace or Sabo or Shanks or Makino or Daiden or Gramps, and she can imagine how lonely that must have been. She doesn't have to imagine the rejection. She can just picture him declaring war against the world by deciding he was going to be the greatest swordsman that ever lived in spite of everyone else. Maybe to spy new light on how devastating it must have been to lose a rival like his friend. Achieving his dream probably became imperative, the same way achieving hers did after Sabo. And yeah, he's going to do it, but it's a lonely title all on its own. She can see, maybe, why he's tied his dream to hers. It's the same reason she tied hers to his and all her nakamas. "The people you met were stupid," she declares, absolute in her judgment. "Of course I want you. You're Zoro." She hears him snort, more amused than disbelieving, so she lets it be. Then she grins into his chest, ready to depart wisdom she heard on a dock 12 years ago. "But you know, nakama means you never have to say goodbye or be alone." Zoro's fingers trace up her side, slow and purposeful and somehow reverent. "I'm starting to figure that out." Lucy drops another kiss on his collarbone, knowing they won't be making use of Chopper's warning today. Soon, but not right now. She's not ready, and neither is Zoro. This is enough for now. Lucy tugs one of her hands free from under Zoro, and she sets it on his chest, his heartbeat thumping away under her palm. It's slower now. It reminds her of a big gong, low and deep and steady, and Lucy wonders how anyone could reject someone with a heartbeat like that. The hand drawing circles on her waist comes up to cover her hand in his, pressing it against his chest for a moment before lifting the inside of her wrist to his lips, gentle and lingering and worshipful and in the exact same spot she kissed him earlier. For some reason this makes her eyes well with tears again, and this time she doesn't hold them back, can't really, when he's peppering her calloused hand with kiss after kiss, tracing over each knuckle and scar and imperfection with care. She's glad he doesn't take this as a sign to stop, or that he's done something wrong. Glad he finishes by returning her hand to its place over his heart and kisses the crown of her head instead, rubbing the back of her hand with his thumb. It's not that she's sad, or upset, or anything in between. It's just, she's overwhelmed with how much she loves him, and how much he loves her, how much she's missed him, the sheer disbelief she's still fighting at the fact of his presence, and how long she's waited for this. It feels like more than 2 years. It feels like her whole life. "I wanted you, after Ace," she tells him, because she has to. "I wanted everyone else, too, but I wanted you most." Needed, might be a better word. Zoro doesn't really react except for a subtle tightening of his grip. "Didn't leave you," he promises, just like he did when they first reunited. And it makes her gasp again because she only ever mentioned it the once, and yet he just seems to know how afraid she gets when people she loves stray from her side, how she always compulsively wonders what she did to make them run. "Thought of you a lot." "Me too," she whimper cries. "I love you, Roronoa Zoro," she whispers, breathing it into his skin. He doesn't say anything, doesn't repeat the words, but he spreads her fingers against his chest, right over his heart, and lays his hand over hers, covering it completely because his palm is nearly twice as big, and she hears it loud and clear as a bell as her palm accepts the message passed from skin to skin, one body to the next, and she falls asleep hearing "I love you, I love you, I love you," over and over again with every heartbeat and every breath until there is nothing and no one in existence but them. It's hours later when Zoro wakes fully, still slouched on the couch beneath Lucy and shadowed in the soft light of the glowing aquarium. He's been vacillating between sleep and the waking world for a while now, part of him still incredulous of their newfound understanding and wary of it being a dream. But every time he wakes he feels the pull of skin where she bit him, feels the scratches she decorated his shoulders with, sees the blooming bruise on her throat and the ones he littered on her thighs. It's real. Somehow, he still has a hard time believing it. He thinks he wouldn't maybe, if they hadn't been separated so long. Part of him built up the idea of a relationship with her as a fantasy, a secret desire that would never be, For various reasons mostly centering around self-esteem issues he never realized he had. A lifetime of focusing on his swordsmanship and general manliness to the exclusion of all else apparently had side effects he wasn't aware of. Lucy is still asleep, breathing deep, and even, her voice sounds quiet and clear, like a tinkling wind chime instead of a clanging bell. She seems exhausted, even now. He's not actually sure he's ever seen her go this long without eating. It's been 6 hours already, yeesh. He can't bring himself to rouse her, figures she'll wake up when she gets hungry enough. He swears though, if the first thing out of her mouth is the cook's name, he's going to lose it and not let her off the couch until she forgets everything but how to scream his own. There's a knock at the door, and Zoro's arms tighten around Lucy, wary and jealous, before he realizes it's just Nami, probably checking up on their too long silent captain. "Come in," he grunts. The door opens and he sees Nami cautiously peek inside before striding in all the way. "We were getting worried when you guys didn't surface," she tells him, eyebrow raised as she surveys their disheveled but still clothed state. Lucy's face, half visible pressed against him as she is, but still obviously tear-streaked, and the unopened box on the tray. "You two look comfortable, you guys talk?" Zoro nods, not bothering to deny it. He still can't believe how much he shared with her, everything he said, or almost anything she said in response. He wants to feel embarrassed, but he can't muster the feeling beyond the bone-deep contentment and satisfaction he feels. "I'm Zoro's mine. I love Zoro." He's still a bit stunned, to be honest, that he can just kiss her whenever he wants now. Yesterday he couldn't even believe he could see her whenever he wanted, let alone anything else. Nami's eyebrows both fly to her hairline, reading the expression on his face. "Wow, you guys really did talk. I kind of assumed you'd just start going at it like rabbits. Count me impressed." Zoro would be offended if he hadn't thought just randomly kissing her would be the best and simplest course of action right up until he saw her staring at the aquarium. Looking at her face, it just didn't seem like enough. "We're starting to see sunlight outside the ship," Nami informs him, and Zoro glances up, realizing he zoned out a little. "We should surface in an hour or so. Lucy will want to see it." Zoro nods, agreeing. Lucy would be disappointed if she wasn't awake for their reckoning with the new world. He squeezes the hand clasped in his, and nudges her with his elbow. She's a heavy sleeper on a good day, but he's fairly certain she's totally opposed to waking up right now. "Oi, Lucy, wake up." She shifts, humming sleepily, and nuzzles into his shoulder, but otherwise doesn't respond. Zoro sighs. "Hey, Lucy. We're surfacing." He shakes her slightly, grasping her shoulder. Zoro, she mumbles, and pathetically he feels a little spike of something flattered in response to his name being the first thing on her lips. "Oi, wake up," he tells her, capitalizing on momentum. She squirms, and he feels her frown against his neck. "Hungry. Sanji, food," she orders, still half asleep. Zoro feels an eyebrow twitch at the mention of the cook bastard. He's going to be lucky to keep his legs when Zoro's through with him after that note, the fucker. His renewed anger seems to wake her up better than anything else so far, and she sits up, blinking blearily and frowning at him. Her face still clouded with sleep and her hair sticking up everywhere. "Mine," he thinks giddily. "She's mine, and I want to see this every day for the rest of my life." He's still a bit raw, obviously. He hopes he settles down soon, but at least he's not alone in that if the way Lucy's gaze turns hungry as she stares at him is any indication. "We're going to break the surface soon," Nami repeats. "You probably want to be on deck, right?" Lucy startles, obviously a bit shocked to see the navigator. Then she processes the words and scrambles up off of Zoro, nearly pulling both of them to the floor with her flailing. "Yeah, definitely," she cheers while Zoro curses and stands. He can't be mad though when she's smiling like that. Or at all, considering the syrupy happy feeling tingling all over his body. A strangled growl echoes through the little room, and all three occupants give Lucy's stomach a look ranging from impressed to horrified. Lucy blinks at him, and then grins, grabbing his hand and yanking him toward the door behind her. "Saannnnjii, food." Zoro manages to grab his katanas from where he set them by the door as she drags him along. It's not like he really tries to resist or anything, but it takes a little fancy footwork to take them up without making Lucy use her abilities. He's astonished at how quiet the weapons are, nearly docile. A week ago they were giving him migraines, and now they almost seem united, like the four of them are finally on the same page, the hum in his mind a far cry from the wailing chorus that he's come to know. She's going to be awful when they actually start having sex. Nami grumbles behind them, I'm going to have to double the food budget. Zoro sends a glare over his shoulder because it's not that she's wrong, it's just that he'd like to be able to worry about their relationship without the rest of the crew prodding them. But you know, nakama means you never have to say goodbye or be alone. Nami gives him a challenging look, he lets it pass. The rest of the crew is gathered on the lawn deck, chatting excitedly and sending him and Lucy's joined hands very not subtle glances Zoro can't be arsed to care about. He'd much rather be teased than let go at the moment. He's done restraining himself around Lucy. Mine, the still deliriously happy part of his brain chants, mine, mine, mine. He told her earlier that he wasn't going to make her do any of those things she suggested, but that whole tattoo idea is interesting. His hands tingle with the memory of her flesh between his fingers. Property of Roronoa Zoro indeed. Maybe across her back, instead of her rear, so it's less demeaning, underneath her leather band, so no one but him would see. Maybe his swords. The cook bursts out of the galley, carrying several plates of food, and Zoro nearly growls, his hand clenching around Lucy's. She notices, somehow sufficiently distracted from the food to see his discomfort. She frowns, and then her grin becomes downright diabolical, and Zoro just knows this is going to be either hilarious or infuriating. I'm getting a tattoo, everyone, Lucy declares, seemingly at random. Zoro raises an eyebrow, on my butt. The cook chokes. Most everyone else gives Lucy a look somewhere between confused and fond, or a Lucy-specific mix of the two. What is it if, Lucy? Robin asks, because of course she does. Lucy's expression turns absolutely smug. Only Zoro gets to know. Zoro chokes. Everyone chokes. The cook cries. Robin laughs, and so does Lucy, and soon everyone is laughing except Zoro and the cook, and even Zoro is resigned now, rolling his eyes, and Lucy sidles a little closer to him even as she eyes the food the cook is laying out. Outside the sea is growing steadily lighter, the gradient fluctuating from black to cleed. Lucy seems to grow more excited and animated with every passing minute. She never lets go of his hand though. Not even during their meal, when it was an impediment to her furious shoveling of meat. At one point she even offers him some, which is how he knows she really meant it when she said she loves him. Lucy wouldn't share meat with God. Their nakama are thankfully pretty casual about them, and don't make much of a fuss. Frankie keeps giving Zoro suggestive looks that are one part the approving and suggestive raised eyebrows of an older brother, and one part the warning I will castrate you looks of an older brother. Nami occasionally gives him a glance that could be interpreted similarly. Most of the crew, however, just smiles, like they're proud and somewhat relieved. Chopper especially looks happy every time he glances at them, and Zoro just hopes he doesn't bring up mating again like he did on Skypiea. Sanji is the only one that looks at all displeased with the development, and even then it seems more like a token protest than anything. Zoro would ignore it entirely if he wasn't still furious about that fucking note. But that can be dealt with later when he isn't so violently happy. Look, look, whales, Usopp calls, and everyone at the table whips around, trying to see what he's talking about, and in the paling green-blue sea they all express awe and surprise as the massive creatures surround them, the ship speeding up uncontrollably in the current the pod creates. They're beautiful, and unbearably loud as they call to one another in the water, affirming each other's presence in a way not dissimilar to the way Zoro periodically checks on his nakama. Everyone stands, expecting adventure and chaos, and Nami wails for them to brace themselves to surface. It's like last time. Lucy cheers, using her free hand to press her hat to her head. With Laboon, it's like they're seeing us off. And Zoro has too much experience with Lucy's weird connection with furiously large animals to doubt her, figures she's simply right, and twists his free hand into the rigging to hold them both down as they breach the surface, the others screaming and Lucy laughing, and Zoro can't look away, wouldn't if he could. They break through the sea, ejected on the whale pod's current hundreds of feet in the air, like a coup de burst on steroids, or the top of the reverse mountain again. The bubble of glistening resin pops at the peak of their arc, and the water droplets mix to create fractals of light, cast rainbows across the deck and dimple Lucy's skin, and she giggles at the effect, glancing down at herself and then looking up at Zoro in wonder. For a moment Zoro is blindsided, wholly convinced that light radiates from her smile, not the sun, and reflects in the falling water droplets and oily resin in a cascade of color and brilliance that floods the seas, the skies, everything and all things, everywhere. Lucy is the center of the universe, all there is, and he can't help yanking her forward as she giggles, pressing a kiss to her temple and her cheekbone and the corner of her mouth, an echo of a promise made long ago, one he's finally ready to accept. Lucy shivers, obviously remembering, and when he pulls back her gaze is wondering, hungry, reflecting the same delirious happiness possessing him. The rest of the crew screams as they descend, Frankie scrambling to fire off a blast to make sure they don't land at a bad angle, and Zoro can't look away from Lucy, can't stop soaking in the warmth of her dark eyes or the naked want she displays when he brings her fingers to his lips. He'll deal with the cook later, explain in no uncertain terms exactly how many steps past too far he went with that note. He'll fight monsters both human and not for this girl, challenge the very seas themselves, move the currents if necessary, cut through any obstacle in her path as they make their way to Raftel, be anything she needs to realize her dream and his too. They're going to conquer these seas, them and their nakama, and they're going to do so in style, incite chaos and leave freedom in their wake as they pursue it themselves. His captain is going to be Pirate King, he's going to be the world's greatest swordsman, and he's so terribly in love with her it hurts. Maybe some of this shows on his face. Maybe none of it does. Either way, Lucy doesn't break eye contact with him, her own thoughts of the future swimming behind her eyes. The ship lands heavily in the water, but the Atom Wood gives barely a groan, strong and worthy as it is to carry forth the next Pirate King and her crew, and their nakama let out a collective sigh of relief, unanimously looking to her for the next order even as the two of them relive their ascent to this place in each other's eyes until finally Lucy breaks away, giving his hand a strong squeeze as she steps to the center of the deck. She looks around at this new and final sea, they all do, and Lucy stands before them with her hands on her hips and a grin on her face as her hat tips over her eyes, looking every inch a king. She doesn't give a speech, she doesn't tell them how she relies on them and their bonds to make it through, or how they've carried each other this far. She doesn't warn of the dangers to come, or the difficulties that might await them. She just smiles, hair whipping behind her in the wind, skirt billowing around her thighs, and says, "On to the new world." And to Raftel, there's a collective cheer. A perfectly unified crew under one banner, under one captain, each strong and wholly devoted to her in their own way, and in perfect agreement as the 9 of them face Sunny's bow, eyes locked on the horizon and new seas ahead.